Chapter 77. 2. Chapter 77. 2. Lian was momentarily dumbfounded. Then suddenly he laughed and clapped. Interesting, absolutely interesting. Eldest Miss is so witty. It really makes it hard for anyone not to be moved. Jiang Susu's body stiffened, a sliver of resentment flashing from the depth of her eyes, only to hear Zhang Ruan's insipid reply. Previously, eldest young Master Li was very moved by second younger sister too. Lian switched the topic. I heard that eldest Miss Birthmother was the young lady of General Zhao's Fu. So how is it that this relationship has been cut off? Without batting an eyelid, Zhang Ruan replied, the personal matters of the deceased, as well as all of their issues, have turned to dust, including that of enemies. That's not possible. Lian seemed to be intentionally teasing her. In a few days, I'll be going with 8th Prince to manage the flooding situation in the north. His Majesty has been closely watching the flooding in the capital. Moreover, I heard that eldest Miss Biaoga Zhaoyi Darren is with the capital's garrison, so if he manages to grab hold of this good opportunity, then I'm sure he will gain great meritorious commendations. Upon hearing this, Zhang Ruan's fingers clenched slightly. However, her face did not reveal an iota of chagrin as she replied, even so, that has nothing to do with Ruan Yang. General Zhao has spent more than half his life fighting on the battlefield. He must have been bestowed many rewards. At present, the plight of the people within the capital who are lacking in provision and are poverty-stricken causes one to worry. Zhao Darren's heart cherishes the people of the land, and should he be able to distribute some food provisions to the victims of the flooding, the commoners will definitely be immensely grateful. Young master, do consider one's words. Zhang Ruan replied indifferently. She was aware that Lian was deliberately provoking her. Even if General Zhao's Fu had mountains of gold and silver, the victims in the capital were just too many. Before long, there would also be an influx of refugees pouring in. Therefore, there wouldn't be enough provisions to buy even at a higher price. Furthermore, even if one had mountains of gold and silver to use, it would be quickly depleted. Lian laughed boisterously. This chat with eldest Miss has been very beneficial. It is getting rather late and I have to make my way home. I hope that the next time we meet, eldest Miss will be like today, chatting merrily and with such wit. Although on his elegant face there was a smile, his deep eyes seemed fathomless with darkness, almost like they were steeped in venomous poison. Zhang Ruan nodded. Definitely. Without another word, Lian turned and went off. With the turn of his head, the smile on his face came off like a cloak and his expression turned ominously sinister and terrifying. Once he stepped out of the Jiang Fu, the young manservant by his side asked, Young master, was it the work of eldest Jiang Miss? Definitely her. Lian leaped onto the horse. That immature and inexperienced girl had a pair of ambiguous eyes. When confronting his probing and interrogation, she had taken it in stride and had even countered with provocation. He flicked his whip and the horse neighed and in a blink of an eye sprinted off. On the street in the capital, naturally it wasn't just this horse galloping, and as Lian was riding by, another horse happened to brush past his. The other horse was a rare colt with a magnificent and gleaming jet-black coat, and on its back its rider wore a cape and a bamboo hat. He stopped in front of a restaurant in the city center, handing his horse to a waiter, and entered the establishment. Arriving at the second level, a maidservant led him towards a private room. He parted the pearl curtains and walked in, and when those seated within the room saw him enter, one of them who sat to the side, eyes lit and he exclaimed, Second brother. Guanliang Han was the great Jin dynasty's general-in-chief, heroic and accomplished in battle, and his title of war god resounded across the four corners of the land. At this time, he had returned triumphant with his contingent and was returning to court. However, he did not accompany the troops but had instead slipped away and returned on his own. He had always possessed a carefree and unfettered character, and even though the emperor was aware of it, he often turned a blind eye to his antics. He looked towards the youth who had called out second brother, and indeed it was Emotsong. Emotsong added, Second brother, where is the jackal cub from the northwest you said you'd bring back for me? He had always wanted to secretly rear that particular breed of jackal in his manor. In a few days' time when the troops return, I'll have it sent to you. Guanliang Han was just slightly past 30 years of age, had a tall stature and was good-looking. However, his face was covered with a beard, making him appear like a devil at first glance. I think you have been immersed in the feminine air within the capital that you're almost like a woman. Next time you can come with me to the desert for some training. You're so skinny that you look like a monkey. Emotsong was disgruntled. Second brother, how can that be a good idea? All of your knowledge is about fighting battles, a real waste of your outstanding stature. Moreover, what's wrong with being skinny? Third brother is also skinny and he too is doing just as well. Can you even be compared to third brother? Guanliang Han struck a posture as if he was going to give him a thrashing. Your third brother would crush you with just one finger. All this time, Xiao Xiao, who had been sitting contemplatively to the side, finally lifted his head. Second brother. I say third brother, do you always indulge this young lad? It's been a year, and there has not been an iota of improvement. Guanliang Han stated. When they were younger, they had all come from the same sect. There were a total of 8 sect brothers. Guanliang Han was ranked as second, Xiao Xiao was third, Emotsong was 7th, and in 8th position was Xianli. At that time, Xianli went up the mountain to learn skills, but after learning halfway, something happened. Henceforth, the sect consequently treated him as if he didn't exist, and by tacit agreement, everyone had never brought the matter up again. No one outside of their sect knew about their relationship, and it was only privately in conversation that they would address each other so. How long will you be in the capital this time? Xiao Xiao asked. Being accustomed to Xiao Xiao's glacial character, Guanliang Han scratched his head. The Northwest has sent some people for a peace negotiation. If there isn't any trouble or provocation, I should be stationed in the capital for the time being. Ah, second brother. Then we will have more opportunities to hang out together and have some fun. Emotsong exclaimed joyfully. Who freaking wants to hang out with you, sissy? Guanliang Han had always looked down on Emotsong's weak dandy demeanor. Moreover, Emotsong's martial arts was the weakest amongst them as he essentially only learned a hair width of skills. Xiao Xiao asked, second brother. I would like to make some inquiries about a person. Who? Guanliang Han queried. Zhang Xing. He inquired. Do you have such a person under your command? Zhang family's eldest young master. Zhang family. Guanliang Han's brows creased. As in the capital's Zhang Quan, that Zhang family? I don't know of anyone under my command surnamed Zhang, but I can't say about the junior soldiers. Why are you looking for eldest young master Zhang? Since when do you have any relationship with the Zhang family? Third brother, don't blame me for being a nag and giving you the heads up. That Zhang family is one large pool of muddy waters, and they have the Xia family as their backers. You should know what kind of people the Xias are, and their relationship with eighth brother is ambiguous and complicated. Eighth brother is like stinky mud, and whoever comes into contact with him will freaking suffer untold misfortune. I have no dealings whatsoever with Xianli. Xiao Xiao stated. Second brother, third brother was not inquiring for eighth prince, Emotsong sarcastically retorted. He is doing this for the Zhang family's eldest miss. What eldest Zhang miss? Guanliang Han asked. Doesn't Zhang Quan only have one daughter, that gifted young lady or whatever? Third brother, have you taken a fancy to her? That can't be. Since when has your judgment deteriorated so low? Guanliang Han had not been in the capital for over a year, and was completely unaware of matters pertaining to Zhang Ruan. Xiao Xiao shot Emotsong a glacial glare, but Emotsong was unmoved, and touching his nose he continued, Third brother, Yifeng told me all about it. Didn't you assign him to investigate on eldest Zhang Miss' behalf? What's that all about? He laughed mischievously at Guanliang Han. This eldest Zhang Miss has only returned to the capital towards the end of last year. Minister Zhang's late wife gave birth to her. Born with a peerless beauty, it is just that her personality is somewhat shrewish, yet at the same time utterly enigmatic. Her machinations have managed to lead second Zhang Miss and Zhang Foreign around in circles. After seemingly thinking of yet another thing, Emotsong suddenly smiled. I'm afraid even second young master Zhang has also fallen into her ploy. Emotsong inherently was intelligent, and with regards to Zhang Chao, he was able to hazard a guess from those minute hints. Hearing Emotsong's account, Guanliang Han's brows creased. Based on what you've said, isn't this young lady ruthlessly malevolent and vicious? What kind of a person she is isn't relevant. Xiao Shap offhandedly replied. You really don't know anyone called Zhang Xing within your command. Guanliang Han noticed his seriousness, hence he stopped being frivolous and replied, I don't know of any Zhang Xing, but I do know of one Zhao Xing. Zhao Xing? Xiao Xiao's brows rose, it's him. Zhang Xing naturally loathed the Zhang family, so it's understandable that he would use his mother's surname when he enlisted. Where is he now? Xiao Xiao asked. I've entered the capital ahead of the others, so he would be with the troops coming in behind me. Guanliang Han explained. He is my deputy general. Yet you say he is the eldest young master of the Zhang family. Deputy general? Emo Song glanced toward Xiao Xiao. Third brother, your brother-in-law is pretty good. Guanliang Han and Xiao Xiao both regarded Emo Song as heir, ignoring him. Then Guanliang Han said, one should not underestimate this Zhao Xing. Over time he has slowly risen up the ranks from camp cook, showing great accomplishment, and step by step he has earned his promotions. When he first joined the military, he was as scrawny as seventh brother. One look and you would think he was a scholar and would easily be blown off by a gust of wind. He kept requesting to go to the front lines, but I didn't approve it. Much later, after observing that his training was not bad, I then took him to battle. He was not afraid of dying, though initially he was apprehensive of killing others, but he soon killed with hardened ruthlessness, losing all the aura of a scholar. I saw him as a man among men. His fighting skills have improved tremendously. Furthermore, he has obtained a number of meritorious achievements in combat. As such, he was promoted to deputy general. This time, it was he who took the initiative and requested to accompany me back to the capital. Jun Gong. Military merit. The system of military merit was implemented most thoroughly by the Qin dynasty, although previous dynasties had implemented various forms of this system. With this system, all soldiers regardless of class or background who achieved military merit were able to enter the nobility and enjoy the attendant privileges e.g. land ownership. Military merit was not easy to achieve, as it was awarded according to the number of enemy soldiers felled as weighed against the number of one's own soldiers killed in battle, i.e. if no. Of enemy soldiers killed, no. Of own soldiers in one's unit, dead, then merit was awarded. We are not sure if the military merit system in Rebirth is based on the Qin dynasty system, or has its own variation. More here. Xiao Xiao looked at him and Guanliang Han continued, according to what you've said with regards to this eldest Zhang miss, and should Zhao Xing be Zhang Xing, then she ought to be his younger sister. I've heard about Zhao Xing's younger sister. In the past, when I asked him why he was so fearless when he was in battle, his reply was that he needed to obtain many great military achievements in order to advance in his military career so that he could one day protect his sister. He paused and looked towards Emo Song, saying, however, when Zhao Xing spoke to me of his younger sister, she was described as innocent, charming and amiable, gentle and sweet-tempered, always being bullied by others. So how did she turn out as you described, a malicious lady? Emo Song spurted out a mouthful of water, and wore a strange expression, innocent, charming and amicable, gentle and sweet-tempered, always being bullied. He reached out and grabbed Xiao Xiao's arm. Third brother, I'm most definitely assured that you've got the wrong person. This Zhao Xing and Zhang Xing are definitely not the same person. No matter how I look at it, eldest Zhang miss in no way would be the one to suffer being bullied. More accurately, it would be best if one wasn't being bullied by her. Xiao Xiao brushed his hands off. What's your thought about Zhao Xing? Guanliang Han observed that Xiao Xiao's expression was without humor, so he replied astringently, if he really is Zhang Quan's child, even then, he is nothing like Zhang Quan. Regardless of when he looked like a scholar till now as a deputy general, he is indeed a man among men. Is there anything special about him? Xiao Xiao's cold vivid eyes conveyed a profound expression, such as the gift for prophecy? Prophecy? Guanliang Han was stunned. Third brother, you're not sick, are you? What's this talk about prophecy? If he had that ability, then we would be victorious in every battle. Why would they need me then, this general? Upon hearing what Xiao Xiao said, Emo Song's expression shifted. Third brother, did you discover something? It's nothing. Xiao Xiao languidly said. The emperor has assigned eighth brother to manage the flooding situation, and also stuck Lian along. Lian? Why's he back? Emotsong queried. He was totally antagonistic towards Lian. Lian was highly intelligent, but unfortunately his intelligence wasn't used uprightly. When those noble young masters were younger and had even the slightest association with him, undoubtedly, amongst them could there be found any who successfully managed to escape from being set up by him. Emotsong was among those, and because he was also rather intelligent when Lian was younger, he had tripped him up many a time. Furthermore, as Lian grew, his covert and veiled underhanded machinations were honed to perfection. His modus operandi had also become more sinister and malicious. What does the emperor mean by this? Is he favoring eighth brother? Guanliang Han asked. Should such talk be heard by others, these presumptuous comments concerning the imperial family was reason for beheading, but Guanliang Han did not care at all. If Xianli succeeded in managing the flooding situation, he would gain much recognition. This would not only elevate his standing within the imperial court, but he would also garner the support of the common people. On the other hand, the crown prince's position would imminently become more and more perilous. The thoughts of the person seated on the Zhouzhong Palace's dragon seat was not something these subjects were able to fathom. Moreover, over these past few years, it was getting even more unpredictable. The mirage of what is true and what is false. One is afraid even Xianli himself wasn't able to decipher the emperor's true motives. If he is sincere and acts favorably towards Xianli, then the crown prince would not have survived till now. Xiao Xiao stated grimly. Third brother, what should we do now? Wait. Xiao Xiao was playing with the dagger as he said indifferently. It is definitely not by chance that Lian has returned to the city. I would like to see what the Li family is really up to. Chapter 78. 1. Chapter 78. 1. Time passed quickly and over 20 days had gone by, but the rain in the capital had not abated. Just by looking at the pitter-patter of the rain, it looked inconsequential. However, the incessant rain, regardless of day or night, just continued to pour. Within the capital, the widespread death of livestock had begun, not to mention what was happening on farmsteads. The whole kingdom of Great Jin was held captive under the shadows of torrential flooding. Just a few days ago, the water levels in the moat had begun to rise, gushing and destroying the dam, thus resulting in numerous drownings of the commoners who resided close to the river. The authorities sent to aid in the relief efforts were like a mantis trying to block a carriage. Thus the management and control of the water overflow had become a matter of top priority. Tangbidangsh, a mantis trying to stop a chariot slash to overrate or overestimate one's ability, and attempt something almost impossible. The imperial court had allocated large sums of silver to the various regions for disaster relief, and from all appearances, it had looked like a copious amount. Yet sadly, as it filtered down and exchanged hands with the various officials who as usual took their cut, by the time it reached the hands of the disaster victims, it was but a smidgen of bare bones. As such, there was an increase in disaster victims. Moreover, many residences that had been submerged due to flooding resulted in even more homeless refugees. Soon many refugees in quick succession began to pour into the city. First, because the capital was on higher terrain, so was least likely to be hit by the disaster compared to other regions. And second, the capital was under the jurisdiction of the emperor, and people were hoping to get a chance to eat a hot meal distributed by the authorities. Unfortunately, the rainwater seemed to accumulate more and more, and with the increasing influx of refugees, the authorities were unable to sustain the massive need for food provision. Thus, 3 days ago the officials had ceased provision of food. Subsequently, the starving refugees began to scour the city and loot wealthy affluent homes. Naturally, these noble folks had personal guards, so the antagonism between them and the refugees within the city started to escalate with each passing day. The Jiangfu's provisions were still sufficient, and there was enough to sustain the Fu for quite some time. As such, everyone within its walls had not grasped the impact of the crisis. If one were to comment on what was different within the Jiangfu, it would be in regards to the Grand Counselor Li Fu's second young master, Lian. He could be seen entering the Jiangfu every other day without rhyme or reason, and even then not doing much per se. With a courteous attitude he would simply chat with Jiang Quan. Jiang Quan was unable to cipher Lian's thoughts, but based on outward appearance, Lian didn't seem to harbor any hostility. Furthermore, there were even subtle gestures leaning towards establishing a close relationship. Lian Xiao walked in carrying a basket of flowers and spoke out contemptuously. Second young Master Li is here again. If one didn't know, they would think that the Jiangfu was his home. It almost seems as though he no longer concerns himself about eldest young Master Li's injury, and is ready to bury the hatchet. Presently, Zhang Ruan was on the couch reading a book, and when she heard those words her gaze moved slightly. There was never going to be any possibility of the Li Fu burying the hatchet with the Jiangfu. Li Yang had become a cripple, and Li Dong and Lian were by no means magnanimous kinds of people. Li An's current behavior was merely a pretense to show that he no longer considered Jiang Quan and Jiang Su as his enemies. Bai Zhu frowned. This morning while I was passing by the courtyard, this servant encountered Fifth Yang again. Fifth Yang said that Master requested Jiang Miss marriage Geng Tai to be delivered in the hopes of rebuilding a relationship with the Li family. Second young Master Li didn't accept, but he also did not raise any objections. Miss, what should we do? Hey. Geng Tai, in ancient Chinese wedding customs, red cards with the names of the man and the woman, the birthplace, the 8 characters of birth and the names of the 3 generations of the ancestors were called Geng Tai. Some are also called Nyanging posts. Geng means year. Geng posts are exchanged between the man and the woman to show their proposal or engagement. More here. Don't take it to heart, it isn't that simple. Zhang Ruan smiled slightly. Lian is a person of abstruse disposition. If I have to really enter the Li Fu, inevitably that would have to wait until I was utterly crushed, without even a spark of resistance, so that later he could slowly torture and torment me. A pity, since this time Lian won't ever have the opportunity to see that day. Although they observed Zhang Ruan's unconcerned attitude, Bai Ji and Lian Xiao were both still somewhat concerned but chose to swallow whatever they were going to say. While they were speaking, Lu Zhu came barreling in. Her face awash with undisguised elation as she brought great news. Once she entered, she closed the main door. Then going to the windows, she closely surveyed the surroundings to ensure that there wasn't anyone loitering before shutting the windows too. She walked to stand before Zhang Ruan, and lowering her voice she smilingly said, Miss, a subordinate of young Master Gu has returned with news that they might have some information regarding eldest young master. However, General Guan made haste to return ahead of time, so the rest of the troops are still on their way. They will arrive in about 10 days' time. She reported. Young Master Gu said that while he is currently unable to confirm, he is almost convinced that the person is our eldest young master. Lu Zhu smiled. Eldest young master is currently a deputy general. Lu Zhu and Bai Ji were stunned. Zhang Ruan stood up and clasped Lu Zhu's hand. Really? Lu Zhu smiled when she beheld Zhang Ruan's emotional expression. It is absolutely true. Bai Ji and Lian Xiao both smiled. It looks like our hard times are over, and it's the beginning of good times. Once eldest young master returns to the Fu, he will definitely protect Our Lady. Zhang Ruan returned to her soft couch, her eyes ablaze with fervor. Jiang Xianji was still alive. Her only elder brother was still alive. In this world she was no longer a person without someone to depend on. In this lifetime there was still time, and she was determined to help Jiang Xianji rewrite the ending to his past unfortunate and violent death. With this thought, the anguished worrying and melancholy of the past few days dispersed, and in its place was the rising of an abundant will to fight. If in this life Jiang Xianji was alive and well, then this pair of siblings must go forth and ensure that all of their enemies from their previous lifetime die tragically. A debt of blood must absolutely be paid back in blood. Zhueshaixichang, blood calls for blood. A debt of blood must be paid in blood. Zhang Ruan abruptly stood up again, her eyes shining and mesmerizing. Since that's the case, there are some things that need to be prepared ahead of time. She directed, Lu Zhu, you go out and employ a couple of helpers. Just use those refugees that have come from outer regions. Guarantee them full meals as wages. Go and buy a big cauldron. Hesitantly, Lian Xiao questioned, Miss, what's it for? I want to bestow kanji. Zhang Ruan casually replied. After putting the chess pieces in place, the time had finally come to execute the planned strategy. In the capital, there was an ever-increasing number of refugees, and still larger groups kept pouring in. shrouding the city under the cover of civil unrest. Commoners were darting quickly about on the streets, ashen-faced. Many bore starved bodies, hovering outside noblemen's residences, in the hopes of obtaining a meal for running an assigned task. The refugees were no different. Those that were strong and robust were robbing people on the streets in broad daylight. The city garrison guards were kept busy day and night, however. The local constabulary was unwilling to apprehend and throw these robbers into prison, as even prisoners needed food rations. Even though the situation was as such, the emperor had not deported nor banished those refugees. While currently the imperial court of the Great Jin Empire appeared tranquil, only those within were well aware of the political unrest and turmoil. They were currently at a tipping point, and they could not allow any major situation or calamity to occur. However, with the present circumstances, the emperor was not in a good frame of mind. Every day, hundreds of court officials attended court in fear and trepidation. There were still some upright and honorable ministers that were concerned for the welfare of the people, making suggestions to distribute provisions to aid the disaster. This further incurred the emperor's wrath and displeasure as the national treasury was already empty. Some time ago, the last batch of disaster relief funds had depleted the national treasury. Moreover, this year's farm crops were destroyed, so there was nothing to contribute to taxes. Then, during this tumultuous time, someone set up a tent and began to distribute provisions. At this critical juncture, the imperial court had the mind to assist but was powerless. They had long stopped bestowing kanji. Naturally, the commoners and refugees were jubilant in believing that the imperial court had not forgotten to care for the people, and thus rapidly spread the news. The food tent was simply erected. On one side were people distributing food and on the other side were people standing by frames that supported a huge cauldron cooking kanji, promising that there would not be a shortage. The queue was so long that it filled up and almost blockaded 2 city streets. A total of 8 persons were guarding the cauldron, and these 8 people were strong and formidable men of valor. Their statures were all tall and beefy, each having a brutish appearance. Thus, those that were restless and attempted to threaten by trying to take advantage of the crisis had all their ill intentions squashed very quickly. The person distributing the kanji was an amiable-looking woman. She loudly spoke, "There has been a change to our current situation. The flooding has created havoc in our land, and all of us are having a difficult time during this situation. Our family's general sympathizes with the people, and has specially spent half of his family's fortune to exchange for provisions to distribute and share with everyone. From today onwards, every morning we will be here to distribute kanji and everyone will get a bowl, but only a bowl each. It's not easy to do something significant in this world. However, the general has said that if the funds from the first half of this fortune are used up, he will take out the remaining half for the emergency relief of the people as well. So everyone, we sincerely appreciate your understanding. The heavens will favor the Great Jin Empire. Our Majesty is benevolent and brilliant, so trust me, we will get through this calamity." Her speech was morale-boosting and in a flash it gave everyone a sense of hope. Someone asked, "Daring to ask this, madam, who's your family's general?" "I'm merely a servant woman, how could I even dare accept the term madam?" The woman smiled in reply. "My residence is General Zhao's fu." General Zhao. Those gathered there began to discuss this. The people overall had a pretty good impression of Zhao Guang. As such, they began to raise their voices. "Many thanks to General Zhao for your benevolence. General Zhao is indeed a hero. We are even willing to work hard like oxen or horses if required." There were many voices of admiration, and just beyond the masses of people collecting their kanji, there was a horse carriage parked. Lu Zhu parted the curtains of the carriage to steal a peek in with elation. She spoke in a quiet voice, "Miss, this has really gone well." Jiang Ruan smiled slightly. "The people that you found were well chosen." Based on what they had heard from their side, it was clear that that servant woman had quite the gift of the gab. Lu Zhu abashedly replied, "That woman was previously a momo for a young lady from an affluent family in the Zhangzhou district. She is cultured and literate, and also very articulate. It's just a pity that while the family died during the devastating flooding, she was the sole survivor and eventually made her way into the capital. This servant saw that she spoke decently, and since she had to act as a person from the general's household, I felt that she was suitable for the task. Her act is really very good." Jiang Ruan smiled. Not far from the carriage, there stood another person. His slender lithe physique, clothed in black, cut a swath through the landscape, distinguishing himself above others. At this moment, he was calmly observing the people queuing for their kanji, and a trace of deep thought passed through his beautiful eyes. After a moment, he turned to the bodyguard by his side. Go investigate that servant woman. Is she not from the general's fu? The genie guard was stunned. Could it be that? Who would be so altruistic in someone else's name? Moreover, these days within the capital there was such a shortage of grain. To provide a bowl of kanji on a daily basis, if it was in the past it would not have been much to rave about. However, currently, this is by no means a small feat. Xiao Xiao was reticent, and in his eyes appeared the image of Zhang Ruan with her indifferent smile. Over a month ago she had made an effort to purchase most of the city's grain. Was it for such a day as this? He had a hunch that with regards to this matter, Zhang Ruan most definitely had a hand in it. However, over a month ago, it had only started raining for a few days, so how did she know that there was going to be devastating floods? Within the general's fu, Zhao Guang was sitting in his study, and even though he was around 60 years and had seen the passing of time, he still appeared to be hale and hearty, and brimming with vitality. He had an angular face and a stern look. At a glance, one could see that he was a military general who had spent a long time on the battlefield. His 3 sons were currently standing before him, their faces bearing identical expressions of grave solemnness. Yesterday old Duke Jun revealed some news to me after the imperial court was dismissed, Zhao Guang stated. 8th prince is preparing to soon deal with the Zhao family. Zhao family's 3rd young master, Zhao Yuanfeng, whose temperament was volatile, burst out, Father, we aren't afraid of him. The righteous will not cower from a crooked shadow. If he has the means, then he can just come at us. Our Zhao family can't easily be shaken by a mere prince like him. Hold your tongue. Zhao Guang spoke in fury. For old Duke Jun to say this, it would indicate that this matter is perilous. You just stand quietly to the side. Don't you cause more trouble for your old man. 3rd brother, 2nd young master Zhao Yuanping, had a fair and handsome appearance and a scholarly disposition. You should already be aware what type of person Xianli is. Moreover, these past few years aren't most of the ministers in the imperial court standing on his side. How many of them weren't raised up by him? He will definitely not use the usual methods that are fair and above board. Eldest young master Zhao Yuanjia sighed. What 2nd brother says is true, but why would 8th prince suddenly think to target the Zhao family? He has not eliminated the powers of 5th prince, and we are in support of crown prince, so why would he suddenly act without consideration? I'm afraid that they are ready to wage war. Zhao Guang's gaze was deeply set. His Majesty had been shielding crown prince for many years, but based on 8th prince's ability and wisdom, I'm sure he has always been well aware of it. I believe he intends to drag our Zhao family into the fray. Then what should we do? Zhao Yuanfeng asked unwillingly. Just let him scheme against us. Old Duke Jun has adamantly refused to disclose even a sliver of information. Zhao Guang sighed. I'm sure it's no small matter. Then he changed the topic under discussion. Currently the population of refugees has steadily increased in the capital, and the rain doesn't seem to be stopping anytime soon. Moreover, His Majesty has appointed 8th Prince and the Li family to manage and control the reservoir. I'm sensing that it is not as simple as it looks. When Zhao Guang was younger, he had fought and won many a battle. As such, he had a natural perceptivity toward danger. It was a military man's intuition. Zhao Yuanjia muttered to himself irresolutely. Over the past few days, Ear has also said just as much. The garrison within the capital has more than doubled. I'm afraid the capital will undergo a change. As they spoke, suddenly a flustered manservant came running in exclaiming, Old master, something has happened. Zhao Guang's brows creased. What happened? The young manservant was witty and articulate, so with a few sentences, he was able to concisely explain the situation. There's someone distributing kanji within the city, a bowl every day, but under the banner of our general's fu. What? Zhao Guang stood up from his chair with a tongue sound. Seriously? Zhao Yuanfeng added, This can't be? Father, is this the handiwork of 8th Prince? Has he lost his mind? Zhao Guang frowned. Do we know the person? The manservant shook his head. The staff from the manor has gone to take a look, and none of them recognize the person. However, those people didn't do anything else beside distributing kanji. Father, should I go investigate? Zhao Yuanjia asked quietly. No, Zhao Guang batted his hand. There's something fishy about this situation. Let's wait out a few days and see. It can be concluded with absolute certainty that the person distributing the kanji was not from the general's fu. So what was the purpose behind the other party's use of the fu's name? Was it one of Xian Li's men or someone else? If it was Xian Li, what was he planning? But if it was another person, to be able to come up with such a huge quantity of provisions at this time, just what kind of backing did they have and what were their motives? Whatever the case with regards to this matter, they could not afford to act blindly without thinking. Chapter 78. 2. Chapter 78. 2. On that very day, the news of the General Fu taking out provisions to distribute kanji spread like the wind throughout the capital. In a matter of time, on every street and in every alley, people were discussing this matter. As such, the news naturally reached the residence of 8th Prince. With a paw sound, Xian Li threw down and shattered the china cup in his hands. Although his expression still maintained a gentle smile, if one looked closely, one noticed the muscles around his mouth convulsing minutely. Obviously, he was utterly infuriated. He chillingly exclaimed, "Well played, Zhao Guang." One of his advisors then asked, "Your Highness, how did this news leak out? Could there be a spy in our midst?" Xian Li sneered chillingly. What other reason could there be? For Zhao Guang to have only played this hand now is an eye-opener for me. He had initially thought to take the upper hand by passing an edict forcing Zhao Guang to cough up his residence's provisions to aid the disaster relief, then using his people to make sure this came to pass. Since the national treasury was in a deficit, and the emperor was anxious, the emperor would readily agree to this action. This would have crippled the Zhao family's influence and power so that he could easily deal with them in the future. Furthermore, when he made the suggestion, he would not only have gained the pleasure of the emperor, but also the combined accolades of both the imperial court and the common folks would have significantly risen. However, since Zhao Guang had taken the initiative to distribute kanji, even though the outcome of reducing and weakening the wealth of the Zhao family was similar to his plans, in actual fact the underlying significance to him was vastly different. With Zhao Guang taking the initiative to distribute kanji, not only had he received the emperor's commendation and praise, in the hearts of the common folks he had gained a higher prestige. On the surface it would seem that influence and capabilities were weakening, but in actual fact, they were not weak at all. Rather, their powers had increased exponentially. Furthermore, with regards to this matter, the opportunity for him to meddle now no longer existed. After all of his furious plotting, it was such a waste of such a brilliant opportunity. How in the world did Zhao Guang think to take the initiative to aid the disaster relief? The advisor asked. He usually has such a foul temper and is very stubborn. For the Zhao family to so frivolously spend their collected wealth from many generations, how could they even bear to harden their hearts? To actually take out all their hard-earned savings truly required great valor. He is surely very courageous, Xian Li replied. All the more he can't be allowed to live. To have the ability to think up the strategy to retreat in order to advance, it would not be easy to take down the Zhao family, who was a force to be reckoned with after many generations within the imperial court. However, never would he have imagined that it was actually someone else who had used Zhao Guang's banner to distribute kanji. After all, at this point in time, provisions were more valuable than gold, and no one would be willing to fork out such a huge sum of silver to aid others. The advisor hesitantly asked, "Your Highness, what about the spy in their residence?" To even allow for messages to get to the Zhao family under my very eyes, naturally it won't be that easy to ferret the person out. Kill them all and change the whole lot, he commanded. Your Highness, the advisor's face lost all its color. These were all people who were meticulously handpicked. To train, nurture and groom each person required a lot of time and money, and to just kill the whole group was totally not worthwhile and such a waste of all that effort. Oh. Xian Li remained unmoved, and with a callous snide smile said, "I would rather kill 1,000 in error than to let one slip by." Kill. The news that the General Zhao Guang had used his personal savings and family wealth to help with emergency relief for the commoners and refugees very quickly spread far above the imperial court. Upon hearing this news, evidently the emperor was very pleased. This action of Zhao Guang had given the emperor a reason to make requests from the other officials. Therefore, everyone from the top officials to junior officials had to all take out silver to help fill the deficit within the national treasury. Zhao Guang was conferred a verbal reward, and also earned a good reputation among the masses. By all appearances, he was not at a disadvantage at all. Just as the person distributing the kanji had proclaimed, every morning they were there in the city center handing out kanji to the commoners. With the regular provision of food, the number of robberies and vandalism within the city had decreased significantly, resulting in a sense of security and peace. Zhao Guang neither denied his involvement nor did he visit the distribution tent. He just maintained a harmonious facade. On this day, Zhao Yi from the city's garrison took a group of soldiers on horseback to patrol the city as usual. These days, with the refugee situation stabilized, his daily duties were much easier. Yet at this moment, he saw a flustered junior soldier galloping at neck-breaking speed towards him. Darren, on the Chongxian farmstead in the east of the city, a group of refugees who were living with the commoners suddenly erupted into a fight over ration. Zhao Yi knitted his brows. He was the Zhao family's eldest grandson and had inherited Zhao Yuanjia's upright and plain-spoken character. What he most loathed were these robbers who came and robbed their households. He spoke in fury. Nowadays there is someone distributing kanji every day, yet they are still so rampant. This is utterly preposterous. At the end of his tirade, he directed instructions to the soldier behind him. Come with me to take a look. Darren, the soldier then reported, in the west of the city at Dongwang Hill, a fight has also broken out among some refugees and the commoners, and it involves even more people compared to what is happening in the east of the city. We should have another squadron of brothers head to Dongwang Hill in the west. Zhao Yi contemplated for a moment before stating, since there are not many people in the East City, I'll just take 2 people with me. Considering they're unarmed and defenseless refugees merely seeking food, make sure you don't hurt them or cause any death. As he was speaking, he turned to 2 junior soldiers behind him. You 2 come with me. When the soldier who had delivered the message saw Zhao Yi depart, he faced a group of soldiers commanding, follow me. The 2 groups each headed off separately, with Zhao Yi taking only 2 people with him. He had outstanding skills in martial arts, and to suppress these refugees, he wouldn't require that many people, so he didn't take the whole situation too seriously. The horse he rode sped at high speed, however. Just then a carriage rushed towards him at an angle. Zhao Yi was stunned and swiftly reined in the horse to come to a stop. The horse carriage also suffered a scare, and the other horse neighed and finally came to a halt too. Zhao Yi was full of concern as he dismounted from his horse, calling out, the person within the carriage, did you suffer any injuries? The coachman was obviously only recently employed, and looked helplessly towards the inside of the carriage. Shortly, the curtains were lifted, and a pretty maid dressed in jade colors hopped out of the carriage. The maid that jumped out turned towards Zhao Yi. You are utterly insolent. Should anything happen to our family's young lady, you would most certainly have to suffer the consequences. Zhao Yi was an upstanding, honest man, and in that moment, he felt culpable. It's all my fault. However, I have a pressing matter to attend to, so if this young lady would present me the name of your fu, I will personally pay a visit to apologize in a few days. The maid in the jade-colored outfit pouted her lips in fury. Who would fancy your apologies in person? Seeing how you are dressed, you ought to be from the city garrison guard out on a mission. The capital is peaceful now. It couldn't be that there are people out there causing trouble? Zhao Yi cupped his hands in salute. There are some refugees plundering the Chongxian farmstead in the east of the city, and it's a pressing matter. So if young miss would please excuse me, I will definitely return and make amends once I have settled the situation there. Chongxian farmstead. A soft, delicate voice sounded from within the carriage, followed closely by the lifting of the curtains and the appearance of an exquisitely captivating face. Zhang Ruan lightly smiled. Darren, you must be mistaken? How could anyone want to plunder Chongxian farmstead? Zhao Yi was somewhat absent-minded when he gazed upon that face. His Zhao family for 3 generations had engaged in the military and had once heard of an aunt. However, from early on, she had lost contact with the Zhao family. Usually, his contact with young ladies was limited to those from military families who had strong tempers and uncouth bearings. So where would he have had the opportunity to meet such a captivatingly beautiful lady? In the past, his uncles had mentioned those genteel and well-bred daughters of civil officials who were known to merely have knowledge of embroidery, but in reality were involved in a lot of internal strife and cunning plots. Even so, as he gazed upon her beatific face, he was surprised to realize that he was beginning to blush too. A soldier standing behind him coughed lightly. Zhao Yi quickly recovered his wits and scratched his head in embarrassment. "Young lady, why would you say that?" Zhang Ruan was able to take in the current situation from his expression. This Zhao family's Biaoge was a rather interesting person. She smiled in response. "I passed by Chongxian farmstead a few days ago. The place was close to the side of the mountain and was badly affected by the torrential rain. The owner had already relocated his whole family, and many refugees had moved in. Since there aren't any city commoners residing there, how could there be any plundering to speak of?" Zhao Yi was stunned. His face respectfully asked, "Is what you've said true, young lady? Why would I deceive you?" Zhang Ruan smiled in response. "Moreover," since Zhao Yi paid attention to her, Zhang Ruan continued, "Moreover, when I was there a few days ago, that bunch of refugees was armed to the teeth, looking like a bunch of barbarous savages. Darren, are you really going to head there with only those 2? I'm afraid that before you've even stepped into the estate, you'll be massacred." The 2 soldiers behind Zhao Yi were startled, hesitatingly inquiring, "Darren?" Zhao Yi had taken up the position of city garrison guard, so naturally, he wasn't some ignorant, juvenile child who was totally oblivious to current matters. From the insinuation behind Zhang Ruan's words, he was immediately skeptical about the present situation being an orchestrated, conspiratorial plot. Drawing from this thought, his brows unconsciously furrowed. Zhang Ruan smiled slightly. "How about I give you a suggestion? There are too many East City refugees, and it's obvious that Darren and these 2 soldiers would not be sufficient enough to deal with the situation. Why not approach the capital magistrate to lend some men to go to the East City? The capital magistrate would not sit by and not lend a hand if he was made aware of the situation." Zhao Yi was invigorated. Indeed, he had only 2 soldiers, and to rashly enter into such a situation would definitely not be the best plan of action. However, if he did not go to Chongxian farmstead and get to the bottom of the matter, he would not be able to catch the mastermind behind all this. The capital magistrate's role was also to defend the city's law and order, so lending some men should not be a big task. As he reached this conclusion, he took an intense look at Zhang Ruan. This young lady had appeared out of nowhere, almost as if she had appeared here specifically to inform him of this matter, even though it appeared to be an unscripted, accidental conversation. However, Zhao Yi could not wrap his head around the fact. Was Zhang Ruan truly unaware of the situation? Regardless, the fact remained that if what Zhang Ruan had spoken was true, it meant that she had inevitably saved his life. Zhao Yi cupped his hand in salute. "Thank you, young lady, for the information. You're too polite, Darren." Zhang Ruan slightly smiled in response as she lowered the curtains and Lu Zhu also returned to the carriage. Zhang Ruan's voice emerged from within the carriage. "Darren, a final word of caution. Those East City refugees are most definitely not regular bandits. They're quite fierce and evil. When you request for manpower from the capital magistrate, the more the better, otherwise the result will be a complete annihilation of the troops." On that note, the carriage departed. Zhao Yi watched as the carriage slowly disappeared from his sight before he leapt onto his horse whilst giving a directive, "Head to the capital magistrate's fu." Within the horse carriage, Zhang Ruan was leaning against a cushion lost in her own thoughts. She had used the excuse of paying a visit to the Lin Fu to see Lin Jixiang, and was ultimately able to rush to save Zhao Yi's life. In her previous life, Zhao Yi had indeed been slaughtered at the East City's Chongxian farmstead, while attempting to suppress the upheaval caused by the refugees. Initially, Zhang Ruan could not grasp how those harmless and unarmed refugees would suddenly become violent and savage. Moreover, Zhao Yi's skills weren't average and therefore, under such circumstances, he should not have been brutally slaughtered. But this time, as soon as the refugees started to enter the capital, She had assigned Lu Zhu to have someone pay close attention to the situation at Chong Xian farmstead. It was only yesterday that someone brought news that not only had a group of people armed with weapons arrived at Chong Xian, but they had also disguised themselves as refugees. Normally, it was unheard of refugees to carry so much weaponry, and they had also come as a group. With this thought, it could only be assumed that they were only disguised as refugees on a mission with every intention of entrapping and killing Zhao Yi, and then laying all the blame on the refugees. If Zhao Yi died, the Zhao family would be without their eldest grandson, and the family would suffer a severe loss. Inevitably, their ascendancy would significantly diminish, and the opposition would collude and take advantage of the situation. It was very likely the Zhao family would not be able to rise up after that. Who can this person be? Jiang family? Xia family? Li family? Zhang Ruan's eyes deepened, surmising that Xian Li was without a doubt somehow implicated in this matter. Seeing the Zhao family's dominance weaken would be an outcome that he would be most delighted to witness. However, in this life, she had undertaken the Zhao family's disaster relief aid of food rations and Zhao Yi would not die. The Zhao family could safely stand steadfast and upright amongst the nobility and aristocracy. If Xian Li was made aware of this matter, it's a wonder what would be his state of mind. Regardless, once Zhao Yi had captured that group of people, he would immediately be alerted to the fact that there is a spy within the garrison army. Upon his return, he would inform the Zhao family, and knowing the Zhao family, they were not people who could be easily trifled with. In their cleaning process to get to the bottom of the matter, they would be most vigilant. For Xian Li to make another attempt in the future would no longer be that easy. Most importantly, Zhang Ruan softly let out a sigh. From the start, the situation with Zhao Guang was like a chasm. She wondered, since she had rescued the Zhao family and saved Zhao Yi, would these events provide leverage for her revenge and allow her to enter the front door of the General Fu? Come what may, for Jiang Xianji she would try. Chapter 79. 1. Chapter 79. 1. The rainy condition was progressively becoming heavier than before. The common people that resided close to the hillsides had met with difficulties as large mudslides rushed downwards. The Bochong Reservoir was the capital's largest reservoir, and the farmlands in the capital completely relied on this area to draw water via irrigation for their fields. So with the rising trend of ferocious rainfall upon their lands, the water level became unrestrained in the reservoir. There seemed to be a risk of the reservoir being crushed by the immense volume of rainfall, and the potential for a hazardous overflow. Xian Li had led his subordinates to manage the waters in an attempt to temporarily suppress the momentum of the rising water level. In the top scorer's Fu, the young Zhuangyun gentleman was standing by the window, frowning in contemplation as he looked at the rainwater. Just then, Lu Foran came in holding a bowl of dark brown sugar and ginger soup and placed it on the table. Seeing Lu Min so, she then sighed. What sort of disaster is this to have harmed so many families in this way? They had initially been part of the common people, and had only recently risen to such a status. Therefore, they were extremely sympathetic to the sufferings of the common people. If not for the fact that Lu Min had entered the imperial court to become a government official, perhaps they would be similarly destitute and homeless just like these commoners, in desperate poverty whilst beset by hunger and cold. Lu Min patted Lu Foran on her shoulder as he consoled her. Mother, you don't have to worry, soon all will pass. If it wasn't for General Zhao, who has distributed provisions as disaster relief, who knows how many of the common people would starve to death. Lu Foran lamented. General Zhao is a good official. When you are in the imperial court, you should certainly try to get closer to him. Lu Min nodded. Thus, the rainfall continuously poured down without the slightest sign of stopping. However, eventually there would be a day when the wealth of Zhao Guang would also be completely spent. This matter could merely just be a splash of water on the fire that burns one's eyebrows. A quick fix for a desperate situation in an extreme emergency. It was not a long-term plan. As he recalled how 8th Prince had actively and in a friendly action asked him about his opinions with regards to this flood a few days ago, it seemed that 8th Prince was planning to exert himself to keep this flood in check. Verily, if this person genuinely harbored thoughts to cherish the people of the land under the heavens, then how could such an esteemed individual possibly ruminate over resolving such a precarious situation with him, out of all other possible officials at his disposal, in such a casual manner? Almost imperceptibly, Lu Min sighed. The waters in the imperial court were not shallow, and only those who had placed themselves in its midst could understand that discerning the underlying currents and hearts of those in power was extremely difficult too. In a steady succession of a dozen or more days, the act of bestowing kanji to the common populace never seemed to cease as the capital gradually quietened down. If one could speak of any fresh news, then it would be that the capital's garrison army caught a group of bandits that pretended to be refugees in the area of the east of the city's Chongxian farmstead. The manpower of that day's capital garrison troops was insufficient, and the Darren who was on garrison duty had sought out the capital magistrate to borrow some men. They had then gone to Chongxian farmstead, which soon after became a ground of a fierce battle. With great difficulty, they had managed to subdue these bandits and had locked them up in the prison. Yet in the span of a night, those bandits had all committed suicide to escape punishment. Whilst the populace in the capital had clapped their hands in applause for such a satisfying resolution to the problem, at the same time, they were similarly concerned. In this manner, if the capital was not too peaceful and secure, then the days ahead would be even more challenging. Contrary to what one might expect with this situation, the capital city's garrison army morale was high after extricating themselves from the pressure dealing with a prolonged and stressful situation concerning the captured bandits. In Ruanju, Jiang Ruan was currently leaning against the divan whilst embroidering. In the past, while she was in the rural residence, due to Zhang Lan's family's coercion, she had embroidered day and night until she had developed dead calluses on her hands. In this lifetime, after being reincarnated, she hated that in her past life she had died with her body being badly damaged and riddled with scars. In this life, she was not willing to have any of those scars remain on her body. Now that she had returned to the Jiangfu, the embroidery needlework that had once been her livelihood was thrown aside without a care. Yet these days, once the dead calluses on her hands had completely peeled off and her skin had once more become delicate, now one could see that these hands of hers seemed like a young lady's of an influential family. Only then did she pick up these things once more. Lu Zhu entered from outside and surveyed her surroundings to make sure there was not a person in sight around them. Then she walked close to Jiang Ruan and quietly remarked, "Miss, a person from the General Fu has come. They want to see the person who has bestowed kanji in their name." Jiang Ruan smiled lightly. "Is it truly someone from the General Fu? There is an official seal, and looking at it, it does not seem like a fake." Lu Zhu commented, "Miss, how do you plan to reply to them?" Jiang Ruan then put down the embroidery in her hands as she picked up the celadone teacup at the side. Lightly stroking the rim of the teacup in her hands, she continued, "Then tell them that tomorrow early in the morning, I will personally visit them at their own residence and call on them." "Miss." Lu Zhu was stunned. Jiang Ruan said, "Go then." The Zhao family, since they had already brought up such a request, had likely fixated on the idea of definitely having a meet-up face-to-face. This too was good. The days of Zhang Xianji's return to the Fu were steadily closing in. Just relying on her own strength was truly too difficult, and now that she had placed the bargaining chip clearly in front of them, she would carefully see if the Zhao family was willing to give this favor in return. Within the capital, once the Zhao family received this news, Zhao Guang's complexion had become profoundly solemn. A few days ago, Zhao Yi had arrested a group of refugees in the Chongxian farmstead, and based on Zhao Yi's retelling, those people were bodyguards adept in martial arts. He swore that they were absolutely not ordinary refugees. Yet within a night's span in the imperial prison, all of them had committed suicide to escape punishment. It could be assumed that this was no simple matter. After all, it was unknown who was the mastermind in this whole affair. Yet, Zhao Guang was still able to make a few possible guesses. After listening to hearsay in the capital that 8th Prince's Fu had recently tightly closed their gates, some had said that a large number of bodyguards had been executed. The young lady that Zhao Yi had mentioned bumping into, both the Zhao father and son had thought that the person behind it and the one bestowing the kanji were definitely one and the same. Based on Xian Li's methods of handling things, this person ought to have set themselves against Xian Li. However, the unknown person in question had also helped the Zhao family several times. Only now, one could not speak too much in fear that what is said cannot be unsaid. After all, the other party's identity was still uncertain. And what if it was Xian Li's stumbling block for them? They had gotten someone to go to the venue where they had been giving out kanji, and instructed their subordinate to put forward the request for meeting the person behind this operation face to face to sound them out. Yet, the opposite party had then said they would pay them a visit at their residence tomorrow. This sort of conduct, it truly made one unable to clearly fathom their intentions. Zhao Yuanjia asked, "Father, since that person dares to pay a visit to our residence, then they must have done adequate preparation. Shouldn't we also make our own arrangements?" "Oh, no need," a spark of contemplation flashed through Zhao Yuanping's astute eyes as he replied. "Rather, I think the other party has done so to express that they have no ill intentions. At least, they will not raise a dispute with us in the general fu. Even if he, they assume the gender of the mastermind, does not have a conflict of interests with us." Zhao Yuanfeng seemed wholly unconcerned as he remarked, "We, the people brought up in the general fu, what could we possibly be afraid of? Whether it is a god or a ghost, we can just ruthlessly beat them up until they become round like a pig. Then wouldn't they be honest?" "Shut up," Zhao Guang fumed and glared at him. Angered by Zhao Yuanfeng's words, "You, can't you grow a brain?" Lauer says, "It is true, however, just to safeguard against any tricks that person might pull, let us first have your mother, foreign and also those in you long settled well first." Lauer, second eldest child in a family. Here it refers to Zhao Yuanping, who is Zhao Guang's second eldest son. This is a more casual and affectionate way of addressing someone in the family, a nickname of sorts. Second brother, Zhao Yuanfeng nudged the most intelligent amongst them. "Zhao Yuanping, what kind of person do you think that person will be?" "I don't know." Zhao Yuanping shook his head. "We've all seen father's colleagues before, and it can't be one of them. Anyways, tomorrow we will know who it is." That night, the Zhao family all slept, restless and disturbed. Early in the morning of the second day, Jiang Ruan boarded the carriage to set off. Every few days, Lin Zixiang would give her an invitation, and Xia Yan maintained a gentle, considerate and warm motherly-like appearance. Therefore, contrary to what one might expect, she would have no reason at all to stop her, Jiang Ruan. Moreover, these few days she had been busy with Jiang Susu's matters. Jiang Quan's attitude towards her had somewhat softened, and so Jiang Susu was able to avoid going to the private temple. However, as opposed to what they had hoped, Jiang Susu had not been able to sleep well for a consecutive amount of days for more than half of the past month already. She continued to say that in the middle of the night, there was a ghost who knocked on her doors. Despite inviting several physicians over, her health did not seem to improve either. Thus Xia Yan was extremely concerned. Ever since the General Fu had gotten the emperor's praise and recognition from the act of bestowing kanji to the masses, all of their colleagues in the officialdom had seen the changes in the wind and had set their helms. They had acted pragmatically and flexibly whilst trying to take advantage of the situation, and momentarily, their front yard had been as busy as a marketplace and was filled with many visitors. Today, however, they had especially returned all invitation cards with intentions to visit, specifically to await that one person. Gulu gulu. The wheels of an ashy gray-colored carriage traveled forward and stopped in front of the General Fu's gates. From inside, a slim young lady dressed as a maidservant hopped down and went straight ahead towards the young manservant that was on gatekeeper duty. After speaking a few words, that young manservant hurriedly left. After a short period of time, Zhao took big strides forward from inside those large gate doors. Behind him, there were several robustly built bodyguards following suit. Upon seeing that maidservant, they were slightly startled. Then, just like forming a boundary, they stared attentively at the carriage that was at the gates. The maidservant then walked over to the side of the horse carriage and, standing on tiptoes, she bent inwards to speak a few words. As the curtains on the carriage were lifted by someone, from the inside, another person dressed as a maidservant hopped down. Oh. Zhao frowned. For this person to come outside, why did they bring two maidservants? Why did they conduct themselves like they were a female? Following closely, a maidservant with a slender figure then supported the person in the horse carriage down. Yet, who but an old lady with a stooped figure appeared with her eyes covered with a black slip of cloth. Seeing this, one would assume that it could be a blind person who needed to be assisted by that tall and slim maidservant as they walked to a side. Zhao then stared wide-eyed as he found it hard to conceal the shock in his heart. Could it possibly be that the person that they were looking for was this blind old lady? This truly was something that made one feel too astonished. Then, he meticulously took a measure of the old lady. Yet, he was unable to find any unique point, so it was even more puzzling for him. All at once he was unable to determine anything. "Young master." The gentle voice came from a place ahead of him. It was only then that Zhao Yi realized that while he had been staring at the blind old lady, at some point, another person had alighted from the horse carriage. With a conical bamboo hat placed on them, one could not see their facial features, but that voice of hers, it was definitely one of a female. Moreover, it was rather familiar sounding. He had not expected that the person that would come forward to the General Fu would be a female, and Zhao Yi was stunned. "Miss, please follow me." The four people then followed Zhao Yi as he walked inside the Fu. In his heart, Zhao Yi was filled with surprise. Since it was a female, then it was fine to have just two maidservants following her. But why did she have to bring along a blind madam as well? As he was thinking this, that person suddenly reached up to take off their hat, revealing a familiar face to him. Zhao Yi gaped as he was tongue-tied. "It's you." "It is." Zhang Ruan smiled lightly. "Zhao Darren, I trust you have been well since we last met." In that split second, Zhao Yi flushed as he looked at that bright and beautiful face of the young girl before him. Upon seeing her visage, he was somewhat fumbling for words as he felt ashamed. After all, the other party was only a young girl that was just merely in her teens. In any case, he himself was close to his 20s. How could he have just reddened upon looking at a young lady like this? He then suddenly thought of something as he replied in shock. "The person who has been giving out kanji, that was you." "It wasn't me," Zhang Ruan responded, and seeing Zhao Yi's expression of heaving a sigh of relief, she then added, "It was a person under my employ." "Ooh." Zhao Yi stuttered. "Who on earth are you?" "Zhao Darren, anyways, I have also saved your life once." Zhang Ruan laughed. "I will not harm you." Zhao Yi did not speak. Now that the current political situation in the capital was this chaotic, there were many people who were glaring at the Zhao family like a tiger watching its prey, waiting for an opportunity to pounce on them. Who knew if this would be a trap? However, just like his father, Zhao Yi had a similar personality. Mild, kind-hearted, and upright. He knew of the principle where one must repay favors given to them and had decidedly cupped his hands in greeting young ladies' kindness for saving one's life. On another day, one will definitely doubly return the favor. Strangely, he felt a particular sort of familiarity and closeness to Zhang Ruan. His intuition told him that this young lady in front of him would definitely not treat the Zhao family unfavorably. He had many questions. However, as he saw the slight smile of Zhang Ruan's side profile, he then swallowed them down. These questions of his, once they had reached the hall, Zhao Guang and his uncles would naturally raise them. Jiuming Jian. To reading Dongyong Chuan Xiang Bao. The author had used the last part of this expression that originated from a proverb and had adapted it. The original meant this: dropping the boon of the water, one will flow the spring water out in return. This means that when one receives even the slightest amount of grace from someone else, they ought to doubly repay the favor through actions in turn. Bofu. Father's elder brothers or his older uncles. Chapter 80. 1. Chapter 80. 1. The Zhao family's father and sons sat silently. All three generations of the Zhao family were commanders in the military. Zhao Fu and Su Shi had 3 sons and 1 daughter. Zhao Mei was the third child, and being the only daughter, the entire Zhao family doted on her without end. Although Zhao Guang was a military commander and his mannerisms were rough, he was extremely patient towards Zhao Mei. From a babbling baby to a delicate little girl to a slender and elegant young woman, she had always been raised like the pearl in his hands. When Zhao Mei liked horse riding, he spent a good sum to find a string of superb ponies. When Zhao Mei wanted to learn archery, he personally taught her. Zhao Yuanjia and his 2 brothers were scolded until they were black and blue every day. But when it came to Zhao Mei, no one reprimanded her even a tiny bit. Sure clan name/maiden name. The Zhao family only had this one daughter and Zhao Guang loved her to bits. Su Shi and old Zhao Madam even more so, while the brothers protected Zhao Mei every day, to the point that not one child in the capital's circle of aristocracy dared to bully Zhao Mei. Growing up under such circumstances, as if she was blessed by the heavens, Zhao Mei naturally had a naive and unassuming temperament. so it was a pity she met someone like Jiang Quan. At that time, Jiang Quan was the upstart of the court. Young, handsome and coming from a literary family, he had a kind of elegant scholarly air. For Zhao Mei, who was used to casual, offhand military men, it was truly too attractive. She was very daring and thought of ways to get close to him, but was seen through by Zhao Guang. Zhao Guang disliked Jiang Quan. Although he was a military officer, it was not like he was all brawn with no brains. After weathering through the bureaucracy for so long, he could see this upstart's wild ambitions at a glance. It was fine to have wild ambitions, but after the emperor was prevented from changing the crown prince by Xiao Xiao, the court was constantly filled with covert maneuvers and open fights. Many courtiers had secretly chosen a faction to back. At the time, the Zhao family belonged to the neutral faction, insisting on not being involved with those vying for succession in these muddy waters. But Jiang Quan, on the other hand, faintly revealed his intentions to support 8th Prince. Even if one day they had to join the fight, the Zhao family definitely would not choose 8th Prince. After all, Xianli was an unfathomable person. Dealing with him was like dealing with a tiger. And so Zhao Guang disliked Jiang Quan even more. Although Su Shi doted on her daughter dearly, on this matter she agreed with Zhao Guang. Moreover, as a married woman, she could instinctively see that Jiang Quan did not look at Zhao Mei as a man would at a woman. Rather, it was when he faced the capital's most talented woman, Xia Yan, that his expression would become affectionate. Su Shi was only a married woman. If Jiang Quan really liked Zhao Mei, then she could accept it, but he proposed marriage when he obviously disliked Zhao Mei. It was clear that he definitely had a plan brewing in his heart. At that time, Zhao Mei insisted on marrying Jiang Quan and refused to listen to anyone. One was a rebellious daughter, the other was a stubborn father. It was the first time Zhao Guang fought with Zhao Mei, and it ended with Zhao Mei being put under house arrest. Who knew Zhao Mei would escape from a window and meet Jiang Quan? Thus Zhao Guang flew into a rage, threatening to disown Zhao Mei. Although Zhao Mei was sad, she knew that in the end they were related by blood. With Zhao Guang this angry, naturally he would say as much. After she and Jiang Quan married and Zhao Guang calmed down, she could go to their door and apologize. After all, they were still a family in the end. The Jiang family also thought this way. The Zhao family was, after all, a meritorious and influential aristocratic family. Moreover, they also had a respected status in the capital. So, old Jiang Madam did not continue to object, and took care of the marriage privately. But when the time to visit the maternal family came, the Zhao family did not admit Zhao Mei. They truly had intended to sever relations with Zhao Mei. Zhao Mei was naturally heartbroken, and as the days passed, with the Zhao family showing no signs of reconciliation, the Jiang family's attitude towards Zhao Mei quickly cooled. Not long after, Jiang Quan brought in Xia Yan and became increasingly indifferent towards Zhao Mei. Enduring both a frosty relationship between husband and wife, and also the Jiang family acting apathetic towards her, Zhao Mei, who was alone, thought through many matters. Self-aware of what she had done, she could not bear to see her parents and brothers. Furthermore, she did not want the Zhao family to get involved with the Jiang family's muddy waters. So later, when the Zhao family heard of Xia Yan's affairs and came to visit the Jiang family, with an extremely harsh tone, she had chased the messenger away. With such interactions, gradually the Zhao family and Jiang family really became strangers to one another. The atmosphere in the hall became strange. Zhao Guang looked at Zhang Ruan with a complicated expression. Over the years, it was not that he had not sent people to the Jiang Fu. When Zhao Mei was alive, her attitude was always extremely harsh, as if she was facing an enemy. Therefore, eventually Zhao Guang had also hardened his heart and just pretended he did not have this daughter, even turning a blind eye to the entire Jiang family. Not one bit of news about the Jiang family could be heard in the General Fu. But now this granddaughter of his suddenly came forward, and not only that, Zhao Mei's old Momo, who had once cared for Zhao Mei, had borne such shocking news. The people of the Zhao family were those who would shield their dear ones the most, even if they were at fault. Upon hearing these words, they were inevitably furious with unappeased indignance. Zhao Yuanping, who had all along been silent, spoke up. According to what you say, you are my niece? Why have you been distributing kanji? Wei Xingnu, sister's daughter. Zhang Ruan glanced up at him. Based on rumors, this man was said to be the smartest of the Zhao family. He was born as gentle as a scholar. She smiled thinly. Eighth prince wishes to use this chance to bring down the Zhao family. First, by dispersing the wealth, and second, by removing the Zhao family's influence. Since second maternal uncle has called me niece, it's only a matter of giving a helping hand. Where did you get the silver? Zhao Yuanping stared at her closely, not missing a single twitch in her expression. Zhang Ruan's expression didn't change a bit. Recently the price of grain has risen many folds without slowing. However, I bought it more than a month ago. Zhao Yuanping quipped. Don't tell me you are a clairvoyant. It was only a coincidence, Zhang Ruan replied. A sliver of light flashed in Zhao Yuanping's eyes. He was not blinded by familial affection like Zhao Guang. Neither was he as loyal as Zhao Yuanjia. Nor was he like Zhao Yuanfeng, who only bothered to be surprised. As the most level-headed person in the Zhao family, he had been constantly observing Zhang Ruan after only a brief lapse in shock. Although she very much resembled his late younger sister, Zhang Ruan was a very different person from Zhao Mei. For example, right now, she didn't have any cracks in her expression. From the beginning to now, she had not shown any emotions while watching the Zhao family's commotion. She was even more cool-headed and self-controlled than the enemies he had met, but in the end she was only a niece. Preposterous. How would you know Eighth Prince's plan? Zhao Guang asked sharply. Zhang Ruan's words, especially coming from a girl raised in a boudoir, surprised them immensely. Such a girl should not have known the court's affairs in such detail. It was even stranger because she said it all so bluntly, causing one to wonder if it was all a plot by Zhang Quan. Wait. The most impatient was Zhao Yuanfeng, who laid all his attention on the matter of his niece. What are you saying? You didn't come to revive the relationship with your estranged maternal family? Zhang Ruan flashed him a smile. This youngest maternal uncle had treated Zhao Mei the best, and still it seemed as though his personality had not really changed even after so many years apart. She said, reviving the relationship with the family depends on the general and his foreign. Ruanyang's status isn't important. Today I just came to negotiate a deal. What deal? Zhao Guang cooled down. If it had any relation to Zhang Quan, then her visit would be most suspicious. Zhang Ruan smiled thinly. I saved a great part of the Zhao family's fortune, and also rescued the city garrison Darren, who is also a member of the Zhao family. This array of favors Ruanyang believes are more than adequate. As for the deal, I hope the general can save my elder brother. If we consider on the count of blood relations, my Dage also has half of Zhao's blood in his body. Dage, eldest brother/big brother. Your elder brother? Zhao Guang frowned. What happened to your elder brother? Also, what do you mean by saving ear? Before Zhang Ruan could speak a word, Zhao Yi opened his mouth. Zufu, the young lady I met that day on the way to Chong Xian farmstead, is her. Zufu, paternal grandfather. Zhao Yuanjia was momentarily shocked. So that's how it is. Zhang Ruan said, things are like this. Regarding my Dage, he's currently fine, but the situation is critical. Xia Yan and Zhang Quan want to take his life. She didn't even call Zhang Quan father, and had directly called him by his name. One could clearly see how much she hated him. Niece, you must be clear about this. What does that Zhang family want to do? Zhao Yuanping remarked with the faintest show of a smile. When my mother passed away 5 years ago, I was sent to the residence and Dage entered the barracks. I only returned to the capital late last year. I'm acquainted with the young master of the commander-in-chief's Fu, so I asked him to inquire about Dage for me. Now, Dage has been promoted to deputy general and in a few days, is expected to return in the near future. My maidservant overheard Zhang Quan and Xia Yan's plans to murder him. Niece, are you sure you didn't hear it wrong? Zhao Yuanjia exclaimed. He's still Zhang Quan's own flesh and blood. How can he bear to do it? Zhang Ruan indifferently glanced at him. Zhang Quan loves that pair of siblings from Xia Yan dearly. Without my elder brother, Zhang Chao, who was born from Xia Yan, would be able to inherit all of the Zhang family. If Dage comes back, Zhang Chao's position would become precarious. In addition, now that Dage is a deputy general, in comparison with Zhang Chao, who is still a blank slate, he is definitely the greatest obstacle in Zhang Chao's path. Both of us, brother and sister, have long become thorns in Xia Yan's eyes. And as for being flesh and blood, Zhang Ruan smiled thinly. Eldest maternal uncle has probably had too many comfortable days, and probably is unaware of how we have struggled for life under the hands of these stepmothers. If Zhang Quan truly cared about his flesh and blood, Xia Yan wouldn't have been able to bribe the Taoist priest to slander me with being born under a cursed star, nor would I have been repeatedly harmed when I was sent to the rural residence. If not for my good fortune, I'm afraid that long ago, my mother's grave would have had another coffin beside it. Chapter 80. 2. Chapter 80. 2. What, born under a cursed star? Zhao Guang asked coldly. General doesn't pay attention to the Zhang family's matters, and naturally does not know. However, I would find it hard to believe that even the city defense commander hadn't heard of the uproar about Sukong Daozhang. Zhao Yi looked at Zhang Ruan in surprise. He moved about outside all day, and had heard of the things between the Zhang family and Sukong Daozhang when drinking with his colleagues. At the time, he pitied that innocent eldest Zhang miss very much with a sigh and wring of his wrists, but had no idea that the young lady was his paternal aunt's daughter, his Biaomei. It's preposterous. Zhao Guang hit the table with a fist, feeling like his heart was dripping blood. He was wrong. As Zhang Ruan said, Mayors had not lived a good life at all, but why hadn't she sought help from home? Why did she drive away the people he had sent with harsh words? She was afraid of implicating the Zhao family. He regretted that he hadn't accepted Zhao Mei when she first returned to their door as a bride. So what if the Zhang family tried to make use of the Zhao family's influence? At least Zhang Quan wouldn't dare to bully Mayor like this, forcing her 2 children to these ends. My mother was forced to death by the Zhang family. Although I still am unable to find any evidence, someday it will definitely surface. Zhang Ruan continued. My mother never hated the Zhao family, and when I was very little, she would often tell me stories of the Zhao family. Zhang Ruan looked at Zhao Guang. I have an enmity with the Zhang family as deep as the sea, but for now I only hope General can accept this deal and save Dage. In the end, she wasn't certain exactly how deep the Zhao family's feelings were for Zhao Mei. Speaking of this much was only to make Zhao Guang feel guilty. Despite how advantageous the deal was for them, the Zhao family had always been known to be obstinate. If Zhao Guang felt any regret at all, he would agree to help. She swept a glance around the hall. The Zhao father and sons had resentment in their eyes, and evidently thanks to her, had their anger towards Zhang Quan aroused. Except for one. Zhang Ruan smiled faintly at Zhao Yuanping's inquiring gaze. It should be Zhao Yuanping instead because he is the most rational one among them. Yes, it was like this. No matter how much the Zhao family loved Zhao Mei, she had passed many years ago, towards those long dead. Moreover, it was a person who had been disobedient and had cut ties to their parents. Would their feelings not fade away? Zhang Ruan did not know. She could only rely on what she remembered of Zhao Mei's words about the Zhao family to slowly win their hearts. Amongst the Zhao father and sons, besides the somewhat visibly calm Zhao Yuanping, they all had bloodshot eyes. They were mostly people with emotionally honest temperaments. Moreover, Zhang Ruan was talking about the Zhao family's most treasured daughter, so it was natural for them to become embittered. Reflecting on Zhang Ruan's words, although she talked about it lightly, how could her life at the rural residence have been comfortable with her stepmother seeking to harm her at every turn? Zhang Quan and his wife had dared to harm Zhao Mei, and now even aimed to kill Zhang Xinji. For Zhang Ruan to have survived until now, who knows how many dangerous obstacles she must have experienced. Zhao Guang was extremely infuriated that his eyes were bloodshot. Zhang Ruan calmly gazed at him. General, this deal, do you accept or not? What if we don't accept? Zhao Guang asked. Then I will stop distributing kanji. Since General has won His Majesty's recognition yet refuses to compensate me, I could not possibly have given you such a convenient advantage for nothing. As for saving the city defense commander, saving one life is better than building a 7-story pagoda. But the city defense commander won't be so lucky every day. Zhao Guang looked at her for a while, then suddenly grinned. Good. At first, he had felt that this girl had a cold presence. At such a young age she was unfathomable and her heart was definitely sly and full of paranoia. Now that he knew about Zhao Mei, He felt both regret and hatred, but also the suspicions he held against Zhang Ruan were all cleared away. Now he only considered her his granddaughter. The more he looked at her, the more he liked what he saw. She knew when to take action, was generous in her actions, and her intelligence was definitely one of the very best. A daughter of the Zhao family should have such a bearing like this. Why are you calling me general? Zhao Guang asked expressionlessly. Call me maternal grandfather. Zhang Ruan raised an eyebrow, without a blink, obediently called, maternal grandfather. After Zhao Guang made such a statement, Zhao Yuanfeng jumped to his feet and walked to Zhang Ruan's side. You really are my niece. Saying so, he looked around before shaking his head. It's a pity. Your looks are more outstanding than Mayor, but your temperament isn't as cute. Zhao Mei was gentle, but Zhang Ruan wasn't a gentle person. Zhao Yuanjia and Zhao Yi were naturally happy too. Only Zhao Yuanping sat without moving, gazing at Zhang Ruan. As they were talking, several voices floated over from behind the hall. Yulong, slow down. Even father is unable to guess which nobleman is visiting today. I want to take a look. Mother Zumu, don't follow me. Second brother, wait for me. I'll go too. You two stop right there. Soon after, two young men came out from behind the curtains. They were around 14 or 15 years old. The taller one looked scholarly and refined, with features somewhat similar to Zhao Yuanping, while the shorter one was glowing with health and youthful vigor. The two were stunned to see a beautiful young lady standing in the hall. Yulong Feizhou. Two beautiful married women walked into the hall, calling gently. They were also shocked to see Zhang Ruan, though in the end, it was the gentle and virtuous Susher who stepped forward and smiled. We really can't control these children. Zhao Yi led Zhang Ruan to Susher. Zumu, see who this is. Susher had passed her 40s, but her eyesight was still exceptionally good. Her body shook when she saw Zhang Ruan from far away. When Zhao Yi led Zhang Ruan closer, letting her see clearly, her tears fell like rain. My mayor! She tightly embraced Zhang Ruan. Zhang Ruan hugged back gently. After Zhao Mei passed away, there was no one to hug her so tenderly. Susher's embrace made her fall into a bit of a daze. Zhao Yulong walked to Zhao Yuanping's side and asked, Father, who is she? Zhao Yuanping grinned. She's your paternal aunt's daughter, your Biaomei. Hearing this, Susher shuddered and slowly released Zhang Ruan, looking at her through her tears as her surprised joy receded. She'd thought it was the gods giving her a chance to see her deceased daughter again. However, her heart was soon filled with happiness again. Your Ruaner? She asked. When Zhao Mei gave birth to Zhang Ruan, she had sent people to inquire. Zhang Ruan nodded. Susher did not know what to say for a long time as she stared at her, only patting her hand. Good, you're as beautiful as your mother. You've already grown into a fine young lady. Zhao Feizhou stood beside his mother and looked at Zhang Ruan curiously. All these years I thought I would never get the chance to see you. Ruaner, does your father know about you coming here? Susher asked. Just as the Zhao family did not like the Zhang family, nor did the Zhang family like the Zhao family either. Susher was afraid Zhang Ruan would incur Zhang Quan's wrath by suddenly visiting her maternal family. Zhang Ruan looked at this gentle madam, this maternal grandmother of hers. There wasn't a hint of ill feelings towards her. Smiling, she replied, I have my ways of handling it. Seeing her calm temperament and with a befitting comportment similar to an adult's from head to toe, Susher was both moved and gratified. Your mother has taught you well, taught you very well. Hearing this, Zhao Guang and his sons all had gloomy expressions. Ruaner, why the sudden visit? Do you forgive your maternal grandmother? In the past it was all maternal grandmother's fault for not caring about you and your mother. Have you suffered any grievances? It seemed like Susher was someone the Zhao family had protected very well, and so she didn't know about the treachery of the outside world. Zhang Ruan thought for a moment, then smiled. Why does maternal grandmother say so? It was I who was unfilial, not visiting maternal grandmother for so many years. My life has been very good. The Jiangfu doesn't lack food or clothing, and no one wrongs me. Grievances? Naturally, she would patiently take revenge for everything herself. Seeing Zhang Ruan cover up all the Zhang family's actions, Zhao Guang and his sons felt moved. Sushar had been depressed for many years ever since Zhao Mei's death. If she knew of Zhang Ruan and her brother's sufferings, she would agonize over it 1,000 times. Yet Zhang Ruan did not mention it. To the very end, she had been considerate of Sushar's feelings. She smiled thinly. I especially came here to visit my maternal family. Chapter 81. 1. Chapter 81. 1. Sushar could barely control her excitement. A myriad of emotions welled up in her heart as she embraced Zhang Ruan and said, My poor mayor led a bitter life and died early. Ruaner has grown so much, and must have suffered a lot. All of this is the fault of this old woman. On seeing that Sushar was about to burst into tears once again, Zhao Guang hurriedly came forward to pat her on the shoulder and say, consolingly, Furin, isn't it a good thing that Ruaner has returned? Why are you thinking about such sad things? Zhao Yi also urged her, Zumu, now that our Biaomei has returned, this should be a happy occasion. The two mistresses of the Zhao family also consoled her. Sushar wiped away her tears and smilingly said, Look at me wasting precious time like this. Ruaner, please don't fault this old woman. Zhang Ruan smiled faintly but did not say anything. With the arrival of Sushar, Zhao Guang and Zhao Yi did not continue inquiring into the matters of the Zhang family, but together with Sushar, started asking Zhang Ruan how she had managed all these years. Zhang Ruan told them the details, but concealed the Zhang family's ill treatment of her. Despite this, her indifference towards them was evident, and Sushar was able to pick up on this. Since Zhang Ruan was unwilling to say more, she also did not press her for the details, but looked at Zhang Ruan with eyes full of love and regret. Zhao Guang and Zhao Yi had previously had some understanding of Zhang Ruan, as well as of her past situation. Now, watching her attempt to lighten Sushar's guilty conscience with nice-sounding lies, they came to love Zhang Ruan even more. Zhao Yulong and Zhao Feizhou had never met Zhang Ruan before, and they only knew that a Biaomei whom they had never heard of before had suddenly appeared at the General Fu, so they assessed Zhang Ruan with a lot of curiosity. After Zhang Ruan's conversation with Sushar, Sushar decided she wanted to go to the kitchen to personally cook a meal for her, so she called several of the Zhao family's old maidservants to go with her, and all of the remaining womenfolk left the room. Zhang Ruan looked at Zhao Guang and said, I have something else to say. Zhao Guang waved his hand. Come to the study. He turned his head to look at Zhao Yuanjia and the others, saying, The few of you come along too. Zhao Yi was considered an adult, so he naturally followed behind. Zhao Yulong and Zhao Feizhou wanted to go too, but Zhao Yuanfeng stopped them, so they left discontentedly. In the study, Zhao Guang sat down before asking Zhang Ruan, What is Zhang Quan planning to do with your elder brother? His first words were not about the distribution of kanji, nor were they about Chong Xian farmstead, but about Zhang Xian Ji. Slightly stunned, Zhang Ruan smiled and said, Does this mean that maternal grandfather is agreeing to help me? Zhao Guang stared at her as he replied, He is our Zhao family's grandson. How can I just stand by and watch without doing anything? Look from the side with folded arms, to look on without lifting a finger. Zhang Ruan bowed her head slightly. At the beginning, she had been unsure what the Zhao family's attitude would be, and thus had brought Zhang Quan and Xia Yan into the conversation. In reality, the statement she has made earlier about the maidservant overhearing Zhang Quan's plan was just a groundless assumption. It's just that, in her previous life, Zhang Xianji had met with a vicious attack and lost his life. On thinking about it, this would be the most likely outcome again, so even if it meant that all the Zhao family's plans came to naught, she could not take this risk with Zhang Xianji's life. She said, It will probably take another 5 days for Dage to reach the capital. On his way back to the capital, he will undoubtedly meet with an accident. She paused and looked at Zhao Guang. Even though I don't know what method they will use, they have sufficient means to plot against Dage's life. Win from an empty cave fig. Baseless, unfounded. Zhao Guang clenched his fist. So arrogant. However, the Zhang family doesn't yet have this kind of power. Nowadays, the Zhang family's accounts are bare, and Zhang Quan's official career has suffered one obstacle after another. The Zhang family is nothing more than an empty shell. The real force behind all these things is the Xia family. The Xia family? Zhao Yuanping frowned as he spoke. Xia Yan's family. Indeed, Zhang Ruan said lightly. The Xia family and the Zhang family are related by marriage. Even though there may be conflicting views if Dage is not around, then Jiang Chao is the future head of the Zhang Fu. Once he is the head, there will be an unbreakable connection with the Xia family. If Dage is the head, the relationship between the Zhang family and the Xia family will not last long. Whether due to emotional ties or logic, if the Zhang family seeks the help of the Xia family, the Xia family has no reason to decline. Zhao Yuanfeng said, "Isn't this to compel someone to their death? The Jiang family is truly inhuman. Father, let me kill that dog of a Jiang Quan." Zhao Yuanfeng had had the closest relationship with Zhao Mei, and he had never, not in the slightest, approved of Jiang Quan. Today, hearing from Zhang Ruan how Zhao Mei had been so badly bullied by Jiang Quan, and thinking about how his beloved elder sister had suffered in silence for so long, he was unbearably furious with Jiang Quan. At this moment, after hearing of Jiang Quan's attempt to plot against Zhang Xinji, the itch to do something straight away in order to avenge Zhao Mei was almost intolerable. "Listen to your father and sit down," Zhao Guang exploded. "As if you haven't caused enough trouble." Zhang Ruan smiled faintly and said, "Third maternal uncle, the Xia family definitely has a hand in this matter. However, there is another family which may be involved." "Who?" Zhao Yuanjia asked. "The family of Grand Counselor Li Dong." The minute these words were uttered, the expressions of the people there changed. After a while, Zhao Yi asked, "How did Li Dong come to be connected with the Xia and Jiang families?" Li Dong belongs to 8th Prince's faction, as does the Xia family. The Li and Xia families are closely connected. If the Jiang Fu is in difficulty, the Li family will not stand by idly. Zhang Ruan laughed. "Moreover, Jiang Quan wants to marry me off to the Li family's young master to serve as a stepping stone to be able to use the Li family. Shameless!" Zhao Guang slammed his hand on the table. He was so angry that his cheeks were quivering and his eyes were red. The entire capital knew what kind of person Li Yang was, that dissolute rake who consorted with prostitutes, whose backyard was not enough to house all his concubines, and who derived a special pleasure from sharing the same woman with his father Li Dong. If Zhang Ruan were to enter the Li family, it would be the same as a sheep entering the tiger's den. Zhang Ruan was Jiang Quan's flesh and blood. How could he do something as shameful as this? Mianhua Su Lu. Lit. Sleeping Willow. Metaphor for prostitutes. T/N as Li Yang is just the young master and not the lord of the residence. He probably does not have a large residence area of his own. Thus, his concubines probably share a common space with their own rooms/shared rooms in the back residence. The official residence can only be used by the legal wife and her children. Thanks to Ed Irisu for the explanation. Zhaoi could not hold back his incredulity as he asked, "Biaomei, is what you're saying really true?" Jiang Ruan nodded. The Li family might collude with the Xia family to scheme against Zhang Xinji, but it would naturally not be for this reason. Rather, Lian had recently been rushing to the Jiang Fu repeatedly, and his relationship with Jiang Su and Xia Yan was harmonious. Lian was more intelligent than an average person, and it could be assumed that he had discovered that Jiang Su was not responsible for Li Yang's situation. Lian knew that she was the one behind the incident and was thinking of ways to exact revenge. So, if Xia Yan wanted to scheme against Zhang Xinji, Lian would be more than happy to play a part. Zhao Yuanjia muttered, "Even a vicious tiger won't eat its cubs." 6 Hu Du Shang Che Biu Shi. Lit. Tiger poison does not make a meal out of its offspring. Loyalty and self-sacrifice are valued by those of the lower occupations, while the refined scholars usually act contrary to conscience and discard comradeship. 7. Jiang Quan and Xia Yan, who have always been known for their talent, are naturally cruel and unscrupulous. Zhang Ruan said coolly. 7 Zhang Yi Mei Duo Tu Go Bei, Fu Xian Duo Shi Du Shu Ran, a famous couplet by Ming Dynasty poet, Chao Xuechuan. Lang Xian Go Fei. Lit. Heart of a wolf and lungs of a dog. She said this in a light-hearted manner, as if she was talking about an exceedingly ordinary matter, but within those gentle tones a thread of rancor was clearly revealed, which caused one to feel an inexplicable chill. After a pause, Zhang Ruan said, "To ambush someone along a road would undoubtedly require many men and horses. Maternal grandfather, Could I trouble you to send for your troops, and assign some men to monitor the movements of the Xia and Li families? The instant there is unusual activity, the men should follow behind, and in this way protect my brother's life. Must we really take the step of sending out the troops? Zhao Yuanjia said hesitatingly. Since Xing is a deputy general, he will be returning with his troops. With so many troops, would they dare to attempt an assassination in broad daylight? I don't know what method they will use, Zhang Ruan said. But I do know that if we don't send sufficient manpower, my Dage is headed for disaster. They must take action before Dage reaches the capital. Once in the capital, under the nose of the emperor, it will be much harder to make a move. Therefore, they will definitely plan a way to take my brother's life. Eldest maternal uncle, please do not doubt me. Her tone was slightly cold. Zhao Yuanjia was taken aback and said, I do not doubt you. Maternal grandfather, do you agree to my requirements? Zhang Ruan asked. Although Zhao Guang was a general, he was not one to rush into action impulsively. Ordinarily in battle, he would ascertain that there was guaranteed success before he took action. At this moment, however, without a second thought, he said, I agree. He is my grandson. The Zhao family will definitely protect him. Zhang Ruan said, my heartfelt gratitude, maternal grandfather. Zhao Guang looked at Zhang Ruan. The young girl standing before him was calm, and her speech and conduct were no different from that of an adult. In their Zhao family, on an ordinary day, 13 and 14-year-old Zhao Feizhou and Zhao Yulong would occasionally still display a childlike innocence. However, Zhang Ruan showed not even a hint of juvenile behavior. She certainly appeared sweet-natured and gentle, but there was also a kind of cold indifference in her manner. There were evil tendencies which only those who had undergone the baptism of bloodshed on a battlefield would develop, and these tendencies had already seeped deep into Zhang Ruan's bones. He heaved an inward sigh. Su Shi could not see them clearly, but he had met many more people. After the initial shock, he had seen the tendencies in Zhang Ruan. The entire time, she had never shown the usual excitement most people had when visiting one's kin. Her heart was firm and unyielding, and he was afraid that every word she had spoken to the Zhao family had undergone much careful deliberation first, and every word had a particular intention. She had assessed the entire Zhao family and included them in her plan, but the method she had used was not to conspire against them or to compel them. Instead, as a well-lubricated will makes no sound, she had spoken so that no one could deny her request for help. Even though they had been maneuvered into being involved, they were perfectly happy to do so. Zhang Ruan was so precocious. In all likelihood, her years of living in the Jiangfu were 10,000 times more dangerous than what she had described. When all was said and done, she was a descendant of the Zhao family. Additionally, when Zhao Guang thought about the deceased Zhao Mei, there was no way he could remain indifferent. After pondering these things, he now no longer wanted to inquire further about the kanji distribution and Chong Xian farmstead. He said, Your maternal grandmother should have prepared the meal by now. Let's go out together. Saying this, he stood up and walked out slowly. Perhaps because he had been hard hit by the news of Zhao Mei's situation, his tall and sturdy back seemed to have become somewhat frail. Chapter 81. 2. Chapter 81. 2. Zhao Yuanjia and the others soon followed out of the study. Zhang Ruan was about to walk behind them when a figure appeared before her. Zhao Yuanping blocked her way and smilingly said, What are you really trying to do? His eyes bored into hers questioningly. Ruanyang does not understand what second maternal uncle is saying. The Li family's participation is definitely not due to the reason you have suggested. You must have another reason for stating with such certainty that Zhang Xing is going to be ambushed. Father, not investigating further doesn't mean that I won't. Zhao Yuanping's expression gradually turned grave. Zhang Ruan, even if you are mayor's daughter, I have to ask. Just what are you honestly trying to do? Zhang Ruan quietly gazed at him. 3 generations of the Zhao family were all military leaders, but Zhao Yuanping was incredibly intelligent. It was indeed a pity that the Zhao family disdained the scholarly path. Thus, Zhao Yuanping could not achieve the top rank in the imperial examination and bring glory to the Zhao family. He was so familiar with the art of war and military strategies that he knew them like the back of his hand, and he became a trusted military advisor who could devise schemes of brilliant cunning. On the battlefield, being able to appraise the enemy's mind could assist one's troops to a more assured victory. Right now, Zhao Yuanping was on his guard against her. However, she had never contemplated concealing anything from him. She said, "Second maternal uncle, there is no need to be so tense. I will not harm the Zhao family. If that were not the case, I would not have distributed kanji, neither would I have saved Debiaoga's life. If second maternal uncle is still suspicious of me, please consider all that I have done until now. Has there been even the slightest degree of detriment to the Zhao family?" On seeing that Zhao Yuanping's expression remained unchanged, she smiled indifferently and said, "Moreover, if my Dage can be saved, we are bound to capture some of the assassins. Then we can use them to find out who sent them. If they point fingers at the Li family, this would be greatly advantageous to the General Fu, and not the least bit harmful. The Li family and the Zhao family have always been at odds. Second maternal uncle must surely know. If the Li family were to meet with a mishap, Eighth Prince's influence would also suffer damage. Wouldn't that be a scene that the General Fu would love to see?" Follow the vines to get to the melon. Zhao Yuanping tamped down his surprise and frowned. Zhang Ruan was announcing such blatant statements in broad daylight. What's more, every single word stabbed deep into his mind. For a moment, Zhao Yuanping was unable to say anything in response. Zhang Ruan said, "Second maternal uncle, don't worry. I won't cause trouble for the Zhao family. Between the Zhang family and me, there is an absolute irreconcilable hatred. I will exert every effort to help the Zhao family in order to cause the Zhang family much grief." After making that statement, she bowed quietly to Zhao Yuanping and departed without his leave. Zhao Yuanping considered her words for a while longer before laughing softly. His face then resumed its original expression as he walked towards the hall. The General Fu was a warm place where everyone lived in joyous harmony. However, elsewhere in the capital city, gloom prevailed, as if a howling storm fraught with danger was suddenly approaching. In the Jiangfuzian Huayuan, Xia Yan caught hold of Lin Lang and asked, "Did you hear clearly? Sun Darren really said that?" Lin Lang nodded and replied, "Yes, Furin, eldest young master has really been made a deputy general, and will reach the capital in 5 days. What can we do now?" Xia Yan gripped the teacup in her hand tightly, then threw it violently to the ground. The porcelain cup, with its colorful depiction of a beautiful golden butterfly, was immediately dashed to pieces. Lin Lang stood to one side, not daring to make a sound, and trembling in fear as she looked at Xia Yan. Xia Yan gritted her teeth and said, "What kind of luck does this little bastard have? Why wasn't he killed on the battlefield?" At present, she was still racking her brains to figure out how to prevent Jiang Susu from entering the private temple, especially as Jiang Quan was seemingly unshakable on this matter. Jiang Susu had not slept well since the day Huiju left. She kept saying that there was someone knocking at the door in the middle of the night, but when the door was opened, there was no one there. Xia Yan had written to Huiju to invite him to visit, but Huiju merely said that the evil influence was too strong, and that the best course of action would be to send Jiang Susu to the private temple as quickly as possible to get rid of the bad luck. Xia Yan was so furious that she was dying to tear off Huiju's mouth. At this trying time, when she was hard-pressed on all sides, to hear that Jiang Xianji had been made a deputy general and was returning to the capital city flushed with success caused her to feel endless resentment. However, together with her deeply resentful jealousy, there were also worries. Jiang Chao's failure in the imperial examinations had really disappointed Jiang Quan. If Jiang Xianji were to return at this time, with his outstanding military service, it would be difficult to guarantee that Jiang Quan would not entertain other thoughts. Granted, he did not like Jiang Xianji, and would not presumptively take away Jiang Chao's position. However, there was no way for Jiang Chao to enter the imperial court, which also meant that it would be impossible for him to make and maintain contact with the court officials. If, at this time, Jiang Xianji were to enter the imperial court and establish good relations with the officials, it would be quite disadvantageous to Jiang Chao in future. When the people of the Great Jin dynasty spoke of the Jiang family's sons, it was enough that they mentioned Jiang Chao. Jiang Xianji was merely superfluous. Her chower absolutely could not be tainted in any way, and no one could be allowed to threaten his position. Xia Yan clenched her fists tightly and the expression on her beautiful face turned utterly malevolent, as if she were a flesh-eating devil. She said, Zhang Xinji cannot be allowed to remain alive. What does foreign mean? Lin Lang had been with Xia Yan for many years, so she was generally able to guess the intent behind Xia Yan's actions. When that little bastard returns, what will happen to my chower? People love to make comparisons, so they will always measure chower's failure against Zhang Xinji's success. How can I allow such a thing to happen? Xia Yan gnashed her teeth. Ever since Zhang Chao had failed and had his finger cut off by Hualu, he no longer had a bright and outgoing personality, but instead had become exceedingly eccentric. His entire being was shrouded in a profound gloom, such that people were somewhat fearful when they saw him. Foreign intends to wait for eldest young master to return to the Fu before taking action? Lin Lang asked. After he returns to the Fu? Xia Yan laughed grimly. That little slut is so cunning. Her older brother will not be much different. How can I give him the opportunity to enter the Fu? I will not allow him to enter even the gates of the city. Astonished, Lin Lang said, could it be that foreign is thinking of taking action on the way? But eldest young master will have troops behind him. It will be too risky for foreign to do this, besides there is no guarantee of success. So what if there are troops with him? We just have to use our brains. Xia Yan said impatiently, isn't his sister the person Zhang Xinji cherishes the most? Then we'll use his sister as bait. I'm sure that he will obediently fall into the trap. In the end, no matter what was said, Zhang Xinji had left the Fu to throw himself into military service due to Zhang Ruan. They had never anticipated that he would actually have such opportunities and good fortune. Foreign, do you intend for the master to? Lin Lang asked. No, don't tell him. Xia Yan's fingers tightened gradually, and a hint of bitter rancor flashed in her eyes. He must never ever know. If they were living in previous times, everything would be fine and dandy. Previously, Zhang Chao had been witty and intelligent, Zhang Quan's pride and joy. With Zhang Chao present, Zhang Xinji had no place in Zhang Quan's eyes. Even if Zhang Xinji had been born a deputy general, Zhang Quan would have been willing to close one eye and even resort to backhanded and secretive means, all in order to help Zhang Chao. However, the present Zhang Chao had been reduced to being the laughingstock of the entire capital city, and Zhang Quan's colleagues frequently mocked him because of this. It was to be feared that Zhang Quan's heart was beginning to turn against Zhang Chao. If Zhang Xinji were to return to the capital at this time in such high regard, Zhang Quan would inevitably start considering alternative plans. If that happened, it would be disastrous. Xia Yan clutched her skirt tightly. Then, foreign, how about asking the Marquis for help? Will he help? Lin Lang asked. A few days ago, Jiang Su had vexed Xia Cheng until he had flown into a red-hot rage. Moreover, due to the situation with Xia Jun, Yuya was itching to pick a fight with her. Xia Yan and Jiang Su were already highly disliked in the Xiaofu, so they were unlikely to receive help from that quarter. Naturally, second sister-in-law will not help me, but father will, Xia Yan said. Since it is for the Xia family, father will spare no effort to help me. The Jiang family could also be regarded as a source of assistance, more or less. Even if Xia Cheng was greatly dissatisfied with Jiang Su, he would not be willing to allow an outsider to seize the Jiang family's power and influence due to this small conflict. If Zhang Xinji really did rise rapidly in the capital, he would be an immense threat to Zhang Chao. A Jiang Fu that could not be controlled would be worthless. In order to safeguard the ability of the Jiang Fu to stand with the Xia Fu at any time or situation, Xia Cheng would not stand by idly. In this matter of eradicating Zhang Xinji, he would even be more determinately meticulous than her. Go and get the brush and paper. I want to write to father, Xia Yan said. The corners of her mouth lifted up slightly. The Xia family would help. Moreover, there was another person who had abandoned his family. Li Yang had been injured in the Jiang Fu, thus they should be enemies. Although she had no idea why the second young master of the Li family, Lian, had repeatedly expressed his goodwill towards them, she could nevertheless take advantage of it. With the Xia family and the Li family working together, Zhang Xinji would find it impossible to escape even if he had 9 lives. Cha Chi Nan Fei. Lit. Even if given wings, one would not be able to fly. Chapter 82. Chapter 82. A deadlock in the woods. The spring rain fell in a ceaseless drizzle, but this spring season, the great Jin dynasty did not experience the vigor of life brought about by the spring rain. Instead, it was enveloped by a thick shroud of gloom. Fortunately, in the capital city, the distribution of kanji carried on uninterrupted, and some kind-hearted and wealthy merchants had, one by one, joined the group of people donating provisions. The number of troops on garrison duty had doubled, and the troublemaking refugees had dwindled in number. Apart from the continued challenge of daily living, in other aspects there was not much difference between the time before the flood crisis and the present. The citizens had neither food enough to eat or clothes enough to keep warm, and were even less likely to pay heed to major events in the imperial court. Despite this, the news of General Guan's triumphant return had still recently become the most talked-about topic all throughout the capital city. The courageous and skillful army led by Guanliang Han would reach the capital that very night. However, the Guanliang Han who was on the tip of everyone's tongues was currently sitting in Dongfeng Lu, merrily drinking a cup of a recent vintage of Guanshan pear wine. Beside him, Emotsong said, "Second brother, the entire capital city knows that you are returning tonight. You're really not going to put on a show?" "False appearances," Guanliang Han said with a scoff. "I returned to the capital city much earlier. What show should I put on? If we keep talking about it further, it will eventually be nighttime anyways, and who really cares about such things? Only idiotic people who make a big fuss over nothing." Emotsong shrugged his shoulders and said, "The rain is so heavy. Who knows where they are at this moment, and whether they will be able to reach the capital on schedule." "Don't worry." Guanliang Han wiped his mouth. "My subordinates are no pushovers. Even if the rain were heavier, it would be no problem. Right now they should have reached Wulin Black Forest Road." Wulin Road was not an official road. The official road had been inundated by the rising water a few days ago, and so the horses could not get through. Wulin Road wound through a vast forest of ebony trees, stretching on for miles, and the terrain was complicated. The trees were lush and grew in profusion, and if one were not careful, it would be easy to lose one's sense of direction. Moreover, there were wild beasts roaming around in the forest. However, the entire army was there, so it would not be an issue. Guanliang Han tilted his head, poured wine into his mouth and said carelessly, "Just wait without worrying about it." In the Jiangfu, Zhang Ruan was lost in thought as she sat by the window watching the falling rain. For some inexplicable reason, she had been feeling uneasy from the time she had woken up early in the morning. Although she had been able to suppress the feeling, it still rendered her slightly preoccupied. Lian Xiao hurried in and said, "Miss, this maidservant saw an unfamiliar old woman entering Yan Huayuan. She looked very happy when she left, and the people in Yan Huayuan seemed particularly jubilant as well." Zhang Ruan's eyes leapt. She asked, "Are you sure?" Lian Xiao nodded. Zhang Ruan said, "I'm going out straight away. Baiji Lian Xiao, come with me. Lu Zhu, you stay in the Fu. If that side asks, I have gone out with Miss One to select some jewelry." Lu Zhu nodded and said, "Miss, be careful." Xia Yan had been busy with her own affairs for the past few days, and did not have time to think about Zhang Ruan. Or perhaps she thought that Zhang Ruan would not stir up much trouble, and would be even less of a threat once Zhang Xanji was dead. Thus she was more benevolent towards her at the moment. Concurrently, Zhang Ruan had also become close to Dong Yinger and some others, so it was very convenient to use them as an excuse for going out once in a while. Zhang Ruan and the two maidservants left the Fu. Baiji hailed a horse carriage, and the three of them hurried off to the general Fu. Upon reaching the Fu's main entrance, they saw Zhao Yi and Zhao Yuanfeng leading a troop of imperial bodyguards out of the door. Zhao Yuanfeng was slightly taken aback on seeing Zhang Ruan, and immediately said, "The informer that father placed in the Xia family sent news that the Xia family departed for Wulin Road at first light." After a pause, he continued, "The Li family is also involved in this matter." As Zhang Ruan raised an eyebrow, Zhao Yi added, "It was not ideal for grandfather to come out, so I and third uncle will work together. These men are all Zhao family soldiers. They are dressed this way to fool people. Biaomei, you should wait in the Fu." We will definitely rescue Xing and bring him home. Zhang Ruan shook her head and said, I will go with you all. Without waiting for Zhao Yi's response, Zhao Yuanfeng categorically refused to allow it. No, it's too dangerous. You will wait here. Third maternal uncle, if I don't go, I will not be at ease for the rest of my life. This situation is extremely urgent. Please don't waste time here, third maternal uncle. I am able to protect myself. If it comes to a state where the situation is so treacherous that I cannot do so, then it can be assumed that it is no longer possible to control the situation. In that case, being able to die together with my Dage will be a blessing. Her tone was indifferent, as if living or dying was of no concern to her. Zhao Yuanfeng's heart sank as he looked once again at Zhang Ruan's determined appearance, and he thought about Zhao Guang's assessment of Zhang Ruan the previous day. With his thoughts in a whirl, he said, All right. However, you have to be careful. The sword does not discriminate. If you were to die by some unfortunate incident, how would I be able to account for it before your departed mother? Zhang Ruan nodded slightly. Zhao Yi hesitated momentarily, but as there was nothing he could do, he let out a horse from the rear and asked, Biaomei, can you ride a horse? Before he had even finished speaking, Zhang Ruan had placed one foot in the stirrup, performed an elegant turn and sat squarely on the horse's back, donning a dolly she had randomly grabbed. The agility with which she had assumed her position caused the surrounding imperial bodyguards' eyes to light up. In her previous life, a beauty from the western regions who could ride a horse had arrived at the palace. Her horsemanship was exceptionally elegant, and it set off a craze for horse riding in the inner palace. Unfortunately, Zhang Ruan had never been taught how to ride a horse. In the end, Xianli had personally taught her how to do so. Although her horsemanship was not outstanding, Zhang Ruan had practiced continually in order to make him sit up and take notice of her skill. Thus, she had become quite a proficient equestrienne. She had never imagined that the first time she would reveal her skill at horse riding in this lifetime would be in order to rescue Zhang Xing. Do Li, conical hat commonly seen throughout Asia. More here. Bai Ji and Lian Qiao could not ride and hence had to remain behind at the General Fu. With concern in their voices, they exhorted Zhang Ruan, Miss, be careful throughout the journey. They could not tarry as time was of the essence. Zhao Yuanfeng galvanized them like a horsewhip. Let's go. The entire party spurred their horses onwards as they galloped out of the city. The horses' hooves splashed through the water on the roads in crisp, clear bursts of sound. Zhao Yi and Zhao Yuanfeng were initially somewhat anxious about Zhang Ruan. After all, ladies were physically more delicate, and she might not be able to endure the constant jolting that resulted from galloping at such high speed. However, Zhang Ruan showed no signs of discomfort throughout the journey, so they felt more at ease. The horses galloped even faster. At the same time, Mo Tsong and Guanliang Han had just descended the stairs at Dongfeng Lu. On seeing Xiao Xiao there, they greeted one another, and were about to engage in conversation when they saw a group of people on horseback gallop past. The water that was kicked up by the horses splashed on Mo Tsong, who retreated a few steps and said angrily, Hey, this young master's clothes have been sullied. Guanliang Han burst out in uproarious laughter. You're a man, why are you fussing over such trivial things? Isn't that Zhao Yuanfeng? Xiao Xiao was a little startled and followed Guanliang Han's line of sight. At one glance, he noticed the slender figure in the middle of the party, a particularly striking sight due to the husky figures around it. Although the figure was wearing a dolly, on noticing that Zhao Yuanfeng and Zhao Yi were riding next to this person, and recalling the recent information he had gathered that the Jiang family's eldest daughter was a recent visitor at the General Fu, it was not difficult to guess the identity of this person. What are they going to do? Guanliang Han muttered to himself. Xiao Xiao said, The men following them are Zhao family soldiers, dressed up as imperial bodyguards, thereby calling his attention to that detail. Private soldiers? Oh ho, is this Zhao family joker not afraid to die? Guanliang Han said in delight. Xiao Xiao frowned, then abruptly turned and left. Upon seeing this, Guanliang Han hurried followed him and asked, Third brother, where are you going? I still have something to discuss with you. Xiao Xiao walked over to the hitching post. As he untied his horse's reins, he said, We'll talk when I return. Guanliang Han looked at him and asked, You're thinking of following Zhao Yuanfeng? Xiao Xiao did not reply, being entirely focused on setting off, which was in itself a kind of tacit agreement. Out of the blue, Guanliang Han laughed out loud and said, "This is interesting. I too want to see what this Zhao family rascal is up to. Seventh brother, lead my horse over here." He then patted Xiao Xiao's shoulder and said, "I will go with you." Emotsong reluctantly led over Guanliang Han's horse and asked, "Second brother, third brother, can you take me with you?" There was nothing in heaven or on earth that Emotsong feared, apart from riding a horse. When he was small, a horse had thrown him off its back. It took him 3 months to recover, and he was never willing to ride alone on a horse again. Xiao Xiao said no. Emotsong rubbed his nose and heard Guanliang Han say, "Just be a good boy and stay here." So saying, he turned and vaulted onto his horse. Without sparing Emotsong a glance, he raised his whip, whereupon his horse galloped away. Left behind, Emotsong's face was ashen in fury, but he could do nothing about the situation. In single file, the 2 horses followed after the party in front of them. When Guanliang Han caught up with Xiao Xiao, his face took on a serious cast as he asked, "Third brother, is there something that you know?" Xiao Xiao did not normally have any friendly dealings with the people from the General Fu, so it could not be that he was chasing after them merely to chat about good times. Something must have happened. Being a military official, Guanliang Han was seldom in the capital city, so he also wanted to know if the Zhao family had any secrets. Xiao Xiao heard him and eyed him with astonishment. With his beautiful eyes slightly narrowed, he said coolly, "They are heading out of the city." "Yes, and what of it?" Guanliang Han asked. At present, it was only refugees coming into the capital city. None of the citizens were leaving it. The situation in the capital city was many times better than that of the outer regions. Moreover, that Zhao Yuanfeng and Zhao Yi were leading Zhao family soldiers dressed as imperial bodyguards indicated that there was definitely another reason. What on earth could that reason be? Although Guanliang Han was usually away in the distant frontier regions, he was still able to figure out the temperament of his fellow imperial officials. This Zhao Yuanfeng, the 3rd young master of the Zhao family, was usually rude and impetuous. However, he did not do things willfully. Furthermore, the Zhao family was known for its strict and rigorous upbringing, similar to that in the military, so it was not possible for him to have taken the soldiers to do something at will. "Where would your army be right now?" Xiao Xiao asked. "Oh, the official road has been destroyed, so they should be at Wulin Road. I returned by that route as well, so, estimating the course of their journey, they should be entering Wulin Road right now." After he had finished speaking, a realization seemed to strike him, whereupon he looked at Xiao Xiao in amazement and said, "Third brother, you don't mean to say that the Zhao family is charging for my troops? There are absolutely no relations between the Zhao family and my Guan family. At present, only you and 7th brother know about my return to the capital city. There is no way that the Zhao family is going to Wulin Road to meet me, and it can't be that they are charging for me." Xiao Xiao shook his head and said, "No. It has nothing to do with you." "Then what do you mean?" Guanliang Han was even more puzzled by his reply. Xiao Xiao gripped his horse tightly with his knees as his horse shot forward like an arrow released from a bow. He half closed his eyes and said, "I can't really say what's going on either." After days of continuous rain, the roads were extremely muddy, and the possibility of minor rockslides added greater risk to the journey, such that a journey on foot that normally took 3 days now took at least 5 days. The General Guan's troops had been marching for several days in their haste to return to the capital, and the troops were both physically and mentally tired. In front of them was Wulin Road. The rains had deluged the official road. The forest was dense around them and it was very easy to lose one's bearings, especially as the forest stretched on uninterrupted into the distance. The troops stopped for a rest just before Wulin Road. As Guanliang Han was not with them, the entire army was under the command of Zhang Xing. Some soldiers called out to him in a friendly greeting, "Deputy General, come and sit down and have something to eat." Zhang Xing smiled as he shook his head and said, "No need." The soldiers did not ask again. It had taken Zhang Xing 5 years to rise through the ranks, from a junior camp cook soldier to the deputy general whose scope of responsibility encompassed the entire battlefield. The Zhang family valued the pen more than the sword. When he was growing up, he had studied the 4 books and the 5 classics, and had never practiced any martial or military arts. However, when it came to the point where he could not even protect his own Mimi, he realized that utter uselessness was the way of the scholar. When he first arrived at the barracks, he was treated with no small amount of indifference. On the battlefield, though, the sword did not discriminate. That he was able to protect himself despite his lack of aptitude was a definite blessing from heaven. However, Zhang Xing still strived and finally managed to achieve his current position. Si Shu Wai Jing. The 4 books are the Great Learning, the Doctrine of the Mean, the Analects of Confucius, and of Mencius. The 5 classics of Confucianism are the Book of Songs, the Book of History, the Classic of Rites, the Book of Changes, and the Spring and Autumn Annals. These are the authoritative texts on Confucianism in ancient China. Every son from a rich/noble family had to know them inside out, and they were part of the set texts for the civil service/imperial examination. Read more here. He rubbed his horse's head, feeling unexpectedly nervous. At that time, the decisions to enlist had been due to the temperament of a youth. Thereafter, once on the battlefield, he was no longer his own master. Indeed, he had not returned to the capital city in the past 5 years. On thinking about it now, placing Zhang Ruan in the exploitative and oppressive environment of the Zhang family was truly not a good idea. Over the past few years, he had secretly sent people to deliver his letters, written under different names, to Zhang Ruan, but he had never received a reply. The closer he got to the capital city, the more concerned he grew. In all these years, had Zhang Ruan fared well, or had she met with bitter experiences? After Zhao Mei's death, Xia Yan had concealed her hard heart with a smiling face, and Zhang Quan had never liked the siblings. Cut off from all forms of support, would Zhang Ruan have been bullied by other Zhang family members? The more he thought about this, the more a peculiar, indescribable, jittery feeling rose up in his heart. He was lost in thought when the horse by his side lowered its head and nudged his body, its hoofs pawing the ground restlessly. Zhang Xing laughed and said, "Got it. Hey Feng Black Wind, I'll take you to drink water." There had been no water source along the way, and the water on the ground was contaminated with the decomposing bodies of dead animals and mud. For fear of falling sick due to drinking the contaminated water, the water they had brought with them had been reserved for the troops and horses in ill health. Hei Feng had been thirsty for a long time. There was a little stream in the middle of Wulin Road, so Zhang Xing instructed a soldier nearby, "I'll take Hei Feng to fetch some water. You get the men to rest here first. I'll be back shortly." The soldier accepted his instructions and left. Zhang Xing turned and mounted his horse, intimately patting Hei Feng's neck. "Go!" Hei Feng snorted and stretched his legs to gallop forward. Although it was easy to lose one's bearings in the dense forest around Wulin Road, Hei Feng was experienced and knew the way, so Zhang Xing was not worried. Hei Feng had only gone a short distance when a winding creek appeared ahead. Because the dense canopy of ebony tree branches had kept off most of the rain, as far as the eye could see, the creek water was crystal clear, pure and limpid, without any contamination from the mud at all. Zhang Xing was overjoyed, but Hei Feng stopped moving right at that moment. Zhang Xing thought his horse was tired, so he patted its head and said, "We'll be there soon, Hei Feng, just keep going." To Zhang Xing's complete astonishment, Hei Feng huffed out a few breaths, picked up its front hooves and set them down again heavily, clearly and unexpectedly refusing to move forward. Hei Feng began fretfully stamping the ground where it stood. Hei Feng was a warhorse with battlefield experience and was obviously intelligent, so Zhang Xing became suspicious. He calmly stroked Hei Feng's mane, whereupon the horse, on sensing his pacifying touch, gradually quietened down. Zhang Xing was furrowing his brows in concentration when a swoosh broke the quiet of the forest. Zhang Xing abruptly stretched out his hand and caught the object. It was an arrow with a red cloth bag tied to it. With great suspicion, Zhang Xing tore off the bag and opened it. Inside was half a piece of amber. He was stunned and found himself clenching his fists tightly. When Zhao Mei was alive, she had had 2 pieces of amber in half-moon shapes. Each piece was complete on its own, but the 2 pieces could be put together to form a whole. As it turned out, each piece had a butterfly wing on it, and when the 2 pieces were put together, a butterfly could be seen right in the middle of the whole piece, vivid and lifelike. Zhao Mei had made the amber pieces into 2 necklaces, one for Zhang Xing, and one for Zhang Ruan. The amber piece before his eyes was obviously that belonging to Zhang Ruan. Someone had taken Zhang Ruan's things. For what purpose he had no idea, but it had to do with Zhang Ruan. Zhang Xing's hands went up to touch the piece of amber strung around his own neck. With narrowed eyes, he seemed to emanate a kind of vicious aura. At their current location, they were near the other troops and horses which were resting. However, there could be unknown dangers if he ventured further into the forest. Just then, a rustling sound was heard from within the forest, and he caught a glimpse of a jacket as it flashed past in the depths of the forest, heading even further in. Zhang Xing resolutely kicked against Heifeng's belly and said, "Go." Whether or not there was a conspiracy against him, the other party was using Zhang Ruan to threaten him. He could not remain indifferent, and did not even have the time to send word to his men. At that moment, Zhang Xing felt as if he was walking in the midst of a raging inferno, with every fiber of his body itching to burst forth in impetuous action. Heifeng felt his fury, and even though it did not want to move forward, it neighed lengthily and charged into the forest. The terrain in the ebony forest was complicated in the first place, and it was Zhang Xing's first time traveling that route. Unexpectedly, the person in front of him was highly skilled in martial arts, for this small path they were on was craggy and narrow. Heifeng doggedly followed the trail, and the further they went into the forest, the taller the ebony trees grew. They almost obscured the sky, such that no glimmer of light was seen, and the surroundings were pitch black. There was a momentary flash of the figure ahead of them, and then it abruptly vanished. Heifeng stopped suddenly. Zhang Xing sat upright on the horse, unmoving. The forest was unusually silent. He had no idea how far they had traveled from the little creek and his troops' resting place. Moreover, the disappearance of the person ahead of him confirmed that this was indeed a trap. Who had set the trap and why? Zhang Xing's expression was serene. The impetuous rage had dissipated, as had his worries. In fact, he was somewhat glad. Since this was obviously a trap, perhaps Zhang Ruan was safe. He unhurriedly withdrew the sword at his waist. Once the sword was unsheathed, 3 chi of cold steel reflected his figure. Murder was in the eyes of this young deputy general, for, after all, he was one who had experienced the bloodbath of battle. Chi, traditional Chinese unit of length. Depending on the era we're in, Zhang Xing's 3 chi sword measures somewhere from 66 centimeters to 1 meter, 27 inches to 3 feet. More about the chi here. We will not conjecture as to whether the length of a man's sword reflects his prowess. With a swoosh, Zhang Xing thrust his sword forward, while simultaneously dropping his body sharply, thus narrowly avoiding the sneak attack from behind. In a flash, he turned his horse around and saw a group of strangers dressed as imperial bodyguards. 5 men in total. He made Heifeng take a few steps back before asking, "Who sent you?" "Young Master Zhang, be sensible. Why don't you surrender your life to us, and let the 5 of us return to report the accomplishment of our mission?" one of them said. Zhang Xing laughed grimly and said, "I care not about life or death." So saying, he leapt off his horse in a sudden movement and aimed his sword at the frontmost stranger. The stranger did his best to evade the blow but was unable to do so in time, so Zhang Xing's sword slashed his arm. They had clearly not expected that his swordsmanship would be so refined. The strangers exchanged glances and, without another word, swarmed around Zhang Xing to commence the battle. Chapter 83. 1. Chapter 83. 1. Zhang Xing was 1 versus 5 opponents. However, not even by the slightest margin did he lag behind those who exchanged blows with him in such a short period. At this, each of his opponents had a hint of amazement in their eyes. It was because they were initially asked to observe Zhang Xing who, when all was said and done, had been someone who had been on the battlefield. However, he was someone who was starkly different from Hearsay, a young master of the Zhang family who was described as scholarly and weak. During this period, this handful of fighters found it somewhat strenuous after exchanging blows with him, and by now had expended much of their physical strength. Then one of them gave a meaningful signal to another, and in the split second, These two fighters showed a renewed grit of determination. Step by step, as if their life depended on it, one pressed harder whilst the other circled round to Jiang Xinji's back to strike at his horse's leg. Nay! Hei Feng gave a long whinny as its front legs were severely slashed by a sword. With that, both of its forelegs buckled as it knelt down. Jiang Xinji flipped himself over to get off the horse. As he did so, two other guards seized the opportunity to attack him. Jiang Xinji leaned his body to the side, but when he touched the soil underfoot, he felt that his body was suddenly sinking in. He was startled as he lowered his head to look. As expected, it was because his calves dipped into, and mud as he struggled he sunk even deeper into it. The several fighters then sheathed their swords as Jiang Xinji looked at his lower body. In just a short period of time, the mud had alarmingly pulled him down to waist level. Unexpectedly, he was surrounded by a large marsh area. Above this swamp layer, they had actually used dried, withered branches and twigs to completely conceal this fact, and thus, he had not discovered it prior to this battle. So, these few people who had fought with him had actually planned to trap him here. The more one struggled in a swamp, the more one would be engulfed in its midst. After figuring this out, Jiang Xinji stopped struggling as he coldly stared at the people before him. Who sent you? One of the guards laughed. Eldest young Master Jiang. You can only blame yourself for blocking someone else's path. If you must ask, then when you arrive on the roads of the Yellow Springs, go ask Yama about it. After saying that, with a wave of his hand, Jiang Xinji heard a rustling sound coming from the woods and then saw countless numbers of people appear. All of them had a bow in their hands as they knocked an arrow seemingly in preparation to kill him. Huang Chuan. The underworld of Chinese mythology, which is the equivalent of Hades or Hell. Yin Wangye, the king of Hell. Jiang Xinji had a sudden epiphany. As it turned out, this was actually the real checkmate right here. From the very beginning, these people had wanted to trap him in the marshy swamp, and then in the confusion, they would have him shot dead through the heart with arrows. Such conniving, vicious and sinister intentions. However, after all was said and done, who would have such a deep hatred towards him? But no one was there to help resolve his dilemma, as he then merely saw a wave of someone's hand. At that moment, numerous arrows were simultaneously targeted at him, and as the whooshing sounds pierced the air, the arrows darted like a shower of raindrops towards him. Jiang Xinji still had a blade in his hands and naturally, could not just await his death. With a swift brandish of his sword, he obstructed the first wave of arrows. One after another they fell into the mud. Jiang Xinji knitted his brows tightly. In a short time, with that vigorous sword move, his body had sunk even deeper into the marsh. If this continued on, even if he was not simply shot to his death by the flurry of arrows, he would still submerge and drown in the swamp pit in the end, disappearing from the realm of living. To be caught in such a damnably inescapable circumstance, he was trapped with no room to advance or retreat. What an extremely malicious scheme. With another wave of the fighter's hand, a new wave of arrows shot forth. This wave of the attack was even more concentrated, with a constant flurry of arrows flying successively towards him. Jiang Xinji unhurriedly lifted his sword, but before he could even parry the attack, the arrows that were still in air seemed to be struck with something strange. In midair, they suddenly plunged to the ground, and from far away, there was a sound of swords clashing. The hurried canter of hoofsteps came closer, and with his narrowed stare, he actually saw a squadron of horsemen rushing from the depths of the ebony forest. Wherever they went, they were completely hacking down the men, who were stringing arrows to bows, to the ground. The arrival of this group of horsemen was too sudden, and not only was Jiang Xinji astonished, even the fighters were gobsmacked. One by one, they turned around to deal with these people. Distance too far away, Jiang Xinji could not see clearly, but the appearance of the two men in the lead was foreign to him. Between them was a lone horse whose pace was somewhat slower. The person mounted on it was dressed in red from head to toe. With a dolly on their head, one could not clearly see their features. Yet, Jiang Xinji could not help but feel an odd sensation in his heart. Jiang Ruan tightly clenched her fists on horseback. Even though she had experienced a lifetime's worth of painful torment, she had thought that her temperament had been tempered into a tenaciously cold nature. Yet, when she clearly saw the situation right before her eyes, a rush of uncontrollable rage still burst from the depths of her heart. So it turned out that this was actually how Jiang Xinji had died in her former life. One would have thought it to be true that eldest young Master Jiang would be able to return flushed with his success, in gorgeous and resplendent clothes, to the capital. Yet in the midst of this eerie ebony forest like a trapped beast, he had been captured in a slurry pit and pierced to his death by 1,000 arrows. In such a place not far off from the capital, he had soundlessly vanished from this world. The Xia family, the Jiang family, the Li family, this debt that she had from them, if she did not pay back in full, she would be beside herself. Bu Wei run. What Zhang Ruan meant here was a saying. If she was unable to recompense them for this enmity and hatred that she held for them, she was unable to behave with integrity or conduct oneself. In a way, this concerns her pride, wherein she would have no way to meet anyone in the eyes for sparing them. This saying describes her tenacious determination to get even or more with these fiends. These archers that had been lying low to ambush him in the depths of the forest realized that something was amiss. As they began to cross hands with the people that Zhao Yuanfeng had brought with him, all at once, one could not differentiate the opposing forces from each other. Seeing Jiang Xinji's body still gradually sinking into the swamp, Zhang Ruan's heart was austerely cold. Without thinking any further, she steered her horse as she made a beeline towards him. Previously the fighters had assumed that matters had already reached the point wherein their success should have naturally followed. Yet who knew that midway through their plan, suddenly, the cavalry would come rushing in. Naturally, they were extremely resentful. While some of the men had crossed swords with Zhao Yuanfeng and Zhao Yi, one person had noticed Zhang Ruan. In the midst of this ill-timed arrival of the cavalry, Zhang Ruan's appearance was naturally rather unusual. With her dainty body, it was difficult for anyone to not notice her. That fighter had then leapt quickly into action. With a swish of his sword, he had immediately struck towards Zhang Ruan. Zhao Yi and the others were slightly further away from her. Moreover, at that moment, they were also busily entangled in battle with the other opponents around them, and were too occupied to attend to her. With a narrowed stare of her eyes, Zhang Ruan's gaze met with the flash of that sword strike. Abruptly, she bowed and drew her body flat against the horse's back as she narrowly avoided that slash. With that failed strike, the blade in that person's hand changed its direction as it suddenly chopped down towards Zhang Ruan once more. However, her horse had been frightened by the whip of wind that the sword had caused. Instantly, it had stopped in its steps and Zhang Ruan was left with no way to retreat. She could only raise her hands to block the attack. With a grit of her teeth and a squeeze of her eyes, she supposed that it was just the loss of an arm. However, that strike did not land down on her and Zhang Ruan only heard the echo of a clang and the muffled grunt of a man's voice. As her eyes flared, the man before her had used his left hand to cover his wrist whilst his right hand was somewhat trembling. His hand was trembling so much that he could barely hold the sword in his hand as a trickle of blood dripped from his fingertips. Zhang Ruan had lowered her head when she saw a distorted and deformed bronze plaque hanging on his waist just as the fighter before her began to raise his sword once more. Suddenly, as if there was a gust of wind, a person's figure leapt into the fray to cross blades with him. T/N. This bronze plaque is used as an identification of one's status in an army. Zhang Ruan was slightly startled, however. It was no more than a moment before the fighter suffered a gash to his neck with one slash of a sword. Covering his neck, the fighter fell and rolled on the ground. Since Jiang Xinji had been dealing with the assassins for quite some time on his own, with this new fighter's participation, he quickly dealt with one of the assassins. When the other assassins saw the change in dynamics, collectively they began to surround and close in on this new fighter. Zhang Ruan was still on her horse. As this person inclined his head over to give her a glance, it was unexpectedly Xiao Xiao before her. As his elegant and heroically handsome face turned towards her, he indifferently remarked, "Get behind me." With his eyes coldly staring at the two fighters that had surrounded him, he seemed to not have even the slightest regard for the danger posed to him. As the fighters around him had all rushed towards Xiao Xiao to eliminate him, Zhao Yi caught a break to steer his steed at a breakneck speed towards her. Worriedly, he asked with concern, "Biaomei, are you all right?" Zhang Ruan shook her head and as Zhao Yi looked towards Xiao Xiao, he was at once stunned. "Xiao Wangya." Zhang Ruan responded to Zhao Yi, "There's no time to lose, hurry, please save my dage." There was an endless stream of the clanging sounds of sword fighting at close quarters in the midst of the ebony forest. Without another word, Zhao dashed towards Jiang Xing's location. Yet, the archers that laid in ambush in the forest were a thornier problem than they had expected. First, there were a huge number of them that might even be more than double the size of the Zhao family's troops. Second, these people, in all likeliness, did not seem like a disorderly bunch of layabouts. Contrarily, they seemed like people that one would see in the military troops, organized and disciplined. The remaining fighters were launching an attack directed towards the two people, Zhao Yuanfeng and Xiao Xiao. Thankfully, the skill between these two people were not to be underestimated either, and contrary to their opponents' expectations, they did not fall to a disadvantageous position. After exerting a great amount of strength, Zhao had managed to pull Jiang Xing out of the swampy marsh. Right at this moment they heard a loud mocking shout, "Xingyu, how have you been toyed into such a state?" To go so far as to tail behind them, the one who appeared before them close to the very end of the battle was Guanliang Han. Just as he spoke, the Guan's family troops, who had remained in place waiting for Jiang Xing's return, had finally realized after a long time that something was amiss. Once they set off in search of him and followed the sounds of sword fighting, they had also rushed over to the scene. Upon seeing the situation, Guanliang Han then simply and bluntly laid an order, D*****, where did these youngsters come from? For them to have schemed onto this grandfather's person. Go and exterminate all those archers for me. Galao Zida. Rather than a derogative swear, this expression is simply a Sichuan slang that the people from the Sichuan province commonly use to mock or heckle someone good-naturedly, like in self-deprecatory interjection. It is often used to express the feeling of gloominess or surprise. It is a rather difficult word to place due to its multi-contextual meaning. Guanliang Han uses this phrase in a very self-arrogant way in surprise, since he then refers to himself as their grandfather. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.